They do that with us. Yeah.
I'd like to call this meeting of the King George Board of Supervisors to order.
I'd like to call the meeting of the King George School Board to order.
At this time, we will stand for invocation led by Mr. Sullins and then followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. God, I thank you for the people around the room tonight, Lord, that care about our county, care about our children, and care about the things that are important to you. God, I pray that you'll be with us tonight, Lord. Help us to understand all the things that are true. Help us to be wise to you, that we're able to take care of our children, for the relationship. Lord, I pray that our conversation be filled with grace, and that your name will be glorified. Thank you. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which is stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Are there any amendments to the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the public comment. We do have one signed up today. Reverend Sherman Davis. Please keep it to 3 minutes. Thank you.
No problem. I'm Sherman Davis, and been doing this for about 14 months. This is my first double board meeting. And but anyway, there's only one person in history that Jesus would not save. Anybody know who that was? He would not save one person. Luke chapter 23, the scripture says, Then said Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they parted his raiment and cast lots. And the people stood beholding, and the rulers also with them derided him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if he be Christ, the chosen of God. Of all the people in history, Jesus would not, and because he had to obey the Father's will, could not save himself. If he'd have saved himself, then we would all be condemned. And so we thank God. And he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's probably an understatement, because many times we don't know what, they didn't know what they were doing, and many times we don't know what we're doing. But our greatest need in life is for forgiveness. We all need it. There's not a day that goes by that we don't need to be forgiven for something. Our greatest accomplishment in life is to be able to forgive. We find that difficult, but the Lord said, be ye tender-hearted one to another, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. If we think about all the things we've been forgiven for, it should be easy for us to forgive others, but we have a hard time with that. There are 3 uncontrollable forces in our life. The tongue, James says, the fiery devil behind the ivory bars. And all of a sudden, you ever say something, man, what made me say that? Why did I say that? Then there's the other one is also a T, and it's thought life. You could be riding down a road, sitting, doing something, all of a sudden a thought comes to your mind. You say, where in the world did that come from? Your thought life. And then the third one is the other T is your temper. Folks say, I lost my temper. No, you didn't. You still have it. and it'll come out again. But we need forgiveness continually, constantly, all the time, every day, because we were born with this problem called S-I-N. Not much problem with the S and the N. It's that I in the middle. It's always getting us in trouble. But all said, amen. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. We appreciate it. God bless you. Thank you. You take my granddaughter home.
All right, is there anyone else? Is there anyone online? Has anyone received any correspondence from anyone? No? All right. Well, let's just move on then. So we're going to close the public comment, and we'll move on to discussion items. And you, Mr. Boyd, let me know how you want to do this for tonight. I don't know, when you do your presentation, do you want, are people allowed to interrupt you and ask questions as you go, or do you want to wait to the end? Kind of up to you.
Actually, don't mind.
Okay. All right. Well, before we get to facilities discussion, Mr. Matthew Smallneck, our county administrator, and Dr. Jesse Boyd. So I'll just turn it over to you guys. How about that?
Thank you. Yeah. Lights on. Yeah, can you hear me? Hello, test. There we go. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the school board, Matt Smallneck, County Administrator. So Dr. Boyd and I, we had a meeting last week preparing for this particular joint work session, and we felt this was an important topic to put in front of both boards. The board of supervisors, you know, there's going to be some projects coming in front of you, some decisions will need to be made in the near future. And with the school board, I think there's just a lot of overlap here. So I just want to let me go through these real quick, and just to give you an idea what's on the table, what we're dealing with as far as facilities between the county and the school. So we've got, I'm going to call it the old courthouse across the way here. The courts will be moving out. They should be moved in by, I think it's the 21st. I think it'll be open for business on March 24th. So that, we know that building will be vacant the next coming weeks. We do have general properties going to be temporarily housed in there, as there's a site plan being done behind the sheriff's building for their facility. That may be done. I'm realistically, by the time that site plan's done and construction's up, you're probably looking 8 to 10 months. So general properties will go here temporarily. County has, we leased the second floor of the out parcel in front of Food Line across from Station 1. The second floor houses IT and our engineering department. Down here to our east on Kings Highway, we have social services and the extension office. I know social services, their lease is up at the end of this year. The school board office, we all know where that's at, and as it relates to the old school over there, the condition of those facilities. And this came up during the Planning Commission CIP discussion with, you know, we have all these CIP requests for this facility. Do we really want to invest in this building? And regarding the CIP, there was also a request from the school board, from the schools, I'm sorry, for a $1.5 million storage facility. Dr. Boyd and I have had some conversations about, you know, could this be a joint facility? Because both the school and the county are out of spaces. We're getting out of our storage units at the end of this month, but there's a need for centralized storage with both the county and the schools. We've got the old VOTEC building over here that's mainly being used for storage. I know there was money reallocated from the Board of Supervisors. I think it was $200,000 to get that VOTEC program up and running. Tearing down the old middle school, that IFB, it is on the streets right now. I think it's going to close another week or two. We had a pre-construction meeting, a mandatory pre-construction meeting, very well attended. And then lastly, there was the referendum that passed last November for the new school. So taking these all into account, there's a lot of irons in this fire as far as facilities. The old courthouse across the way, I talked to Ms. Bender today, and she has an entire binder of studies that were done on this building. A lot of these were all done prior to my time. I want to make sure that the Board of Supervisors has all the studies that have been done on this. This will be on one of your future meetings. Really, where do we go with this particular facility, and what does it look like? Who can be housed there? So
I wanted to have this discussion, and Dr. Boyd, if I missed anything from the school side, jump in, but I wanted to have this discussion of where we go. These are major construction projects. Some of these been studied for years. Other are new, such as the referendum for the next school. So I wanted to get some input from both boards, have this dialogue back and forth, and ultimately I'll be coming to the board of supervisors in the coming months to get some clear direction on the courthouse. So I'll leave it right there.
Sure. So from a school standpoint, we have had a lot of conversations as a school board. We're really trying to narrow our focus. I think right now, and really what I think the great benefit of this meeting is, and where I hope we can go in the future, is a collective vision on where we see schools in this community. I know we're just a piece of the pie in terms of the entire county operation, but if we could start having some conversations about what direction we're going into in terms of facilities, I think what it would do for us from the school board angle and from the school board office angle is it would help us focus our efforts, and it would really help us to be a lot more efficient. Right now, even our day-to-day operations are focused on future facility needs and future facility conversations. And if we could come to some conclusions on where we collectively see our schools and also our school board office, I think it would provide us some focus. And more specifically, what I'm talking about is Mr. Smolnick already mentioned CIP requests. I think right now in our CIP, we have almost $2 million of CIP requests for the old school board, or the current school board office that we're in right now. If we collectively believe that the desire is to leave that building, then we would remove those requests. We wouldn't continue to push forward with those requests. However, if the desire is to stay in that building, then obviously those needs will need to be satisfied. So it's things like that. Our annual fund balance conversation, when we talk about where we're going with the fund balance, our facilities in the school board office facility really weigh heavy into where we go with those conversations. So if we tonight could, hear some of the things that Mr. Smolnick is talking about the direction of the community, and as a result, a direction of the school division, I think it would really help us provide some focus on where we're heading with the facilities conversation in the school division. So I can stop there with any questions. I can certainly go through some facility stuff that we have at the school board level if the boards would like to hear that, or if we want to just shoot on some of these other options, I'm certainly willing and able to do that as well.
Mr. Chair. Yes, sir, Mr. Collins. Dr. Boyd, so the VOTEC building, how long would it take to get it up and running, and how much would it cost?
So specifically jumping to the VOTEC building, again, I want to say thank you for the kickstart and the funds that we received through the fund balance conversation. That was $200,000. Since we've had that conversation, we've done a couple different things. I've reached out to Bryce Young, had a pretty good conversation with him. The first thing he said is we really need to take a look at hazardous materials in that building. That building was built in 1968, and it was last used in 2008. So we're going off a decent period of time that it's been used sparsely. And when I say sparsely, right now our NJRTC program shoots in that building. It's a storage facility, and our King George Wrestling program uses that facility right now. So since 2008, there's been no vocational programs in there. We have the hazardous material study that's going to be completed on the 12th. That's scheduled to be done on the 12th. That's going to give us an idea of what any type of mitigation efforts need to be in that building. In the meantime, what I've also done is reached out to 3 architectural firms. I've had no response from one. Another one has already emailed me kind of a feasibility study, not only with what structurally that building needs, but also a deeper conversation as far as what programs we would need to consider going into that building, vocational programs into that building. I could speak specifically on those. I've also had another architectural firm come out, walk the building with us, with my instructional team, my maintenance team, and they're going to get back to us with a feasibility study right now. So until we get those studies from those architectural firms, or if the hazardous mitigation comes back and it has positive results for Mr. Young, I think we can go one of 2 routes. If there's materials that need to be mitigated, we probably need to go the route of going through an architectural firm, and we'll get those feasibility studies ASAP. That'll give us an idea of what that building's going to cost. If we can go through Mr. Young, then we can probably piece out those projects and take a look at moving forward in increments with that project right now. The first thing that we know, that's become the school division's storage facility. So we need to be able to get the things out of there. We're exploring some options for those, but as you all know, on the county side, we have the same issues on the school board side. We don't have storage space anywhere. We're trying to figure out if we have any other options. We've looked at the old school board office, the preschool side, really not conducive to storage because every entrance into that preschool building is a stairwell. It's a narrow stairwell. So it's very difficult to move pallets or anything like that in terms of storage. The cafeteria section is a slightly better option. That may be a storage possibility moving forward. But again, all of these conversations depend on what we want to do with that property and that facility. So that's where we are right now with the vocational program. I can tell you, if you want to go into the instructional conversation, I can also talk to you about what programs our students and our community want in that building. That's what we know in terms of the cost right now and the time.
So half the stuff in there just needs a dumpster. You can flow through that first before you do the rest.
In terms of storage?
Well, I've been in there, and half the stuff is junk. You know, old ovens, old stuff that just sit there.
There's towards the front of that, if I had to generalize it, towards the front of that building right now, there is some stuff that can go. Towards the back of the building, it's turned into our maintenance and our custodial supply area, our paper supply area. All of that stuff will need to find another home. But yeah, we can start getting some of that stuff out of there. But we do need a place to put it.
But Dr. Boyd, maintenance and custodial. So in the maintenance, using our Quonset hut over there that the county owns over there at the school board office, and also have that gigantic back room with all the art buffers and so forth. Why would they need that for a maintenance area when they already have large areas?
So you said the Quonset hut?
The Quonset hut is owned by the county.
The Quonset hut right now is used pretty steadily by Parks and Rec. Again, I mean, if we get direction that we'd like to use it for something else, then we'd take that direction. But I know Parks and Rec relies pretty heavily on that, I believe. But that's where the gymnastics is.
I wasn't talking about that hut. I was talking about the hut further out.
The old maintenance building?
Yep.
That's used for maintenance storage right now. It's not a large space at all. It's like a 2-car garage.
It's not humidity controlled either.
It's not humidity controlled either.
Well, so the only thing that you need to store humidity control is paper. So all this other stuff, I've been down this road before. There's nothing but a bunch of junk laying around that can be getting rid of.
We can certainly clean it up, and I don't disagree with that effort at all. Paper, right now with the paper products, and that's copy paper, toilet paper, paper towels. I think with what we have right now, we would fill half of this room, roughly.
So you don't need to have toilet paper and paper towels temperature controlled. You can have cold toilet paper and cold towel. So the only thing you would need to store in the climate control is paper. And I think there's enough. You want me to stop, Ms. Davis? I'm sorry, I'll stop it.
Mr. Chair, after Mr. Stroud goes, can I go? I know Mr. Stroud had asked first.
Yes. Mr. Stroud, you have something to say? Yeah, yes, sir. Dr. Boyd, you mentioned architectural firms. Can we ask which architectural firms you're speaking with?
Yes. So far, it's been RK&K haven't gotten back to us. Mosley has gotten back to us with a feasibility study alone, and RRMM has come out to walk the facility, and we're hoping to get some information back from them. They've been pretty responsive.
I don't think that we're interested in doing business with Mosley,
I figured that.
so we ought to just cut to that chase right now.
Well, we're going the route of getting free quotes in case we need to.
I'm going to jump in here now. I know for a fact in the VOTEC building there's asbestos. I know exactly where it's located in the welding area, and then the tile, it was all over the actual high school, so I'm sure the tile in that building has asbestos in it. And I know in the middle school you just covered it over except for in the cafeteria, but I know 100% there is hazardous materials in that building.
You're absolutely right. When we had RRMM walk through with us, they had two architects. They gave us some ideas on some things in that building. Some things stood out to me. We'll have notes of that that we can deliver when we receive them. But asbestos floor tiling was one of them. Another thing that was a bit concerning is the width of the construction block used to build the exterior of that building. Architect mentioned that those were like half as thick as what's required by code now, maybe 8 inches, and now the envelope of buildings are 16 inches. This is not my area of expertise. This is more a Bryce Young question. But they said there's some ways to mitigate that by, extending the distance, but it had me a little worried if my impression was that we basically had to build a building on top of a building. Again, all speculative right now. We haven't gotten anything back from them. There's other routes that we can take even if we do get that information back, but we're beginning to unravel those questions.
Because my concern is just like with the old middle school, is that we abandoned it for a little too long and that you have to bring it up to the code now. But jumping on that, knowing for many years how much stuff was stored in there since 2008, and the electric and heat was kind of turned off until we started using it for the wrestling program and ROTC. My concern is dumping a lot of money into that building, with the feasibility study does help. And I know we've already done feasibility studies on the preschool and on the school board office, but for years I've been mentioning that we need to have a shared storage facility, because when you walk through the middle school and it's still there, were pallets of paper that got destroyed because they weren't climate controlled, the cafeteria roof leaked, and then all that money was wasted. So maybe a shared facility, I don't know how my colleagues feel, would make sense in a climate controlled shared facility that just makes the most sense economically and just for the county and the school board, because we don't want everything in every abandoned building that we own. And then for the rest of that, I'll wait for my colleagues, because I have a lot of thoughts of some of the older buildings.
Let's come back to really the first thing that we were talking about was what we're going to do with where that building was, the old building where the school board is now. So, and I say this because it's been a habit, if you paid attention to King George, we tend to, we jump to build new buildings, but we never take care of what we have. And so I don't know where everyone stands on this, but even before we build a new school, and we know we have a new school in our future, whether it's 3, 4, 5 years down the line, whatever. But before I build a new school, I want to know what we're doing with what we already have. Because if we build something new, we're going to neglect it. That's what's always happened. And we have a courthouse out here. It's my vision, and I think some of the other people share it, but mine is that we have a central hub here where all the places are, where someone can go to the school board. They can walk across over here to other offices and things like that. It's one hub. Everything's kind of located right here central in King George. So I'd like to see things get moved over. Mr. Smolik and I have even talked about there is space on this building right here to add on to it where that stairwell is, so we can extend out. We have more property to extend out if we need those spaces. But I'd like to figure out more of what we'd like to do with that old building. Of course, I love history. I'd love to keep the thing. But if it's financially a burden to try to save it, it's also, if you look at it, prime real estate in King George. I mean, for us just to have that big, humongous space just for a school board office. There's so many other things, like the activities or whatever for our county that can go into that little hub right there. And it just seems like a waste of space to me, just for one office. But I'd like to hear what everyone wants to think if we think it's worth saving. If it's not, then we can all agree on something. Okay, that we can cross those things off and we can move on from there. That's money we've saved in a sense.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Dr. Boyd has, in the past, we have had requests for repairs for the roof, for the fire system, for the water, for the windows. We probably have a really good idea of what it would cost to bring that up to.
And the electrical is the big
Right.
project there. Those are all in the CIP right now. They total about $1.8 million. And that's really like the cost associated with staying in that building. Mr. Davis, I like your suggestion. And again, you know, there's a lot of needs in terms of facilities for our students. We want to try not to focus those, you know, resources on school board needs, but we also need to consider not dumping a bunch of money into a building that we know isn't going to serve us. Like you said, that property there is highly sought after. Anytime it comes up in public meetings, there's folks that call the school board office asking about it. So I think if we can collectively agree that, you know, you want us to jump off that lily pad, then I'm not opposed to that, certainly. I think the next part of that conversation is, you know, where do we jump onto and where do we fit in that conversation? And then if that's the decision, then we can certainly remove those things from the CIP because it doesn't make sense at that point to consider updating that bill.
Mr. Chair, I want to throw something out. In the comp plan, when we did it in 2019, we on purpose left the school board site as a development area for the foresight that it possibly at one time could be sold. But I want to throw out an idea I've pitched to many people for years, is that we get rid of all the buildings on the site. You keep the pit because you listen to a lot of people who grew up here. That's what they love the most. Put the citizen center there, like with the field house, and you redo the pit, and then you have a great facility for our young adults and seniors and whoever wants to use the citizen center in the field. And then we figure out what to do with the school board office and Head Start, because there's no historical value in that building. If you want to go back to the first high school, it was in the parking lot and it was torn down in the 1980s.
Mr. Chair, just, I'm just curious, it sounds like we have a general agreement that we are more than willing to not continue to fix and restore things at the current school board office. But so where is the suggestion coming here, since you'll be moving out or building a new? I'm curious, what are you thinking of where we could move to? So that was my question. So Dr. Boyd, how many employees are at the school board office?
36.
36. And how many square foot per office do you need?
I think in the Mosley feasibility study that matched the office needs, it was about 30,000 square feet, I believe.
30,000 divided by 36. 42 divided by 36. Thousand square feet a person.
Does that seem about right?
I got the old study here. I'm just trying to read it. Yeah.
Was it 30 some thousand feet, I think was the bottom line? Oh, that's right. It's on the last one. 32,000 square feet.
Yeah, Dr. Boyd, I'm looking at the programmed area right here where you had on page 9 of the feasibility study in 2023. And it just talks about.
That's the feasibility study.
Mhm.
Is that the updated one?
Yes, it's the
And
last one.
what was the square footage on that one?
Said for admin, it's got the number, area, and then the total. I'm trying to figure out how to read
Bottom
that.
right.
There was a bunch of them. 15,000 for preschool, special ed, 1,300, but the administration.
It says 2620. Am I reading that right, Dr. Boyd?
I'll pull it up. Give me a second.
It's page 9.
No, that's only 2620 as opposed to 30,000.
Let me see. I'll make sure I give you a better number.
Mr. Smalley, do you know how many square feet the courthouse is, the old courthouse?
I'll find it real quick here.
But half those things aren't in it anymore. You gave a total of 32. 32 is not a total. 2,600.
2,600?
That's different than
30.
36,000.
All right, let me make sure I'm on the same page.
Page 9.
I think the average, just research, I was just trying to show that the average square foot per person in an office is about 175 square feet. So you multiply that times 36 and it's between 6,000 and 7,000.
Yeah, feasibility study.
So let's say you go with 7,000.
Can I look at?
Which is a big difference in 32,000. And how many square feet is over here?
20,764, 21,000.
21,000. So you still have 14,000 square feet. And if you move the school board office over to this building, you still have 14,000
The
square
Head
feet.
Start programs in this building. We still have a preschool program at school board office as well right now.
So I don't think that
Still
would
kids.
go over here. Though.
We don't have a place to put them.
Yeah, where would they go?
We'll have to, that's in the grand plan. I'm just talking
I
about,
just wanted to make sure you knew,
I'm just talking
that
about the
number how
administration and folks
preschool.
over there.
yeah.
So if you get those out, you could have 14,000 square feet of other county employees over there. You need to make community development a bigger office and so on. I wonder how many square feet they need. Yeah, I don't know if I would cross that bridge yet, because they'd be the biggest group or the biggest building to put somewhere else. I think you should start with the lower ones, so you can get people out of the school board office, so you don't put money into it. Rather put the money in the
So it's 31,685.
Is that,
I'm sorry.
what's 31,000?
is that only the school board office side we're talking about, not the whole?
I'm sorry. We were over here exploring the feasibility study. The school board office side, based on the Mosley feasibility study, which was our office.
Right.
Is 31,685.
Okay.
That's how big it is now?
That's not how big it is. That's
the need.
That's not how big it is now. I don't know what square footage that building is like.
That was the
That's what
need,
was
correct?
That was the need.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not currently over there now. It's the need that we have. And
I don't understand how you go from
so
21 to 31.
yeah, I think what he's saying is based on 36 people who work in the school board office, why do we need the 30-some thousand square foot new building? Was it because we were going to house some of the Head Start there, or was, no?
No, I don't think so.
That was admin only, right?
That was it. Yeah, school board administration. So an office size is 240 square feet.
Right. But if you do the math and the numbers you're talking about,
And they vary.
36 people and 32,000 square feet, that gives everybody a 30 by 30 office for 900 square feet.
No,
That's not-
Those numbers don't quite work.
The numbers don't add up, is what I'm
Here,
saying.
take a look.
There's probably room for growth. Like if you grow it.
Well, even at that, that'd be a lot of growth. That's what I was looking at.
And with your programming, it's just like the office space, it's the hallways, the custodian closets, the bathrooms, and all that also.
And it's modern code.
Conference rooms, that's correct.
Dr. Boyd,
So you have
that's
that over
modern
here,
code.
though. You have bathrooms and
16-inch
so
wall.
forth over here.
Yeah, that's right.
So
So we can get back to you with the exact number of offices and based on the average size of a standard office, if that's helpful. Would that?
So, Mr. Smollett, could the future needs of the county employees and the school board fit into the old courthouse?
That's a good question, Mr. Collins. So with 21,000 square feet that they have there, you know, it is less than the space needs analysis that they had. You know, could they make it work? You know, the layout of a court facility is probably going to be different than the layout of a school administration. So square footage wise, you may be able to get that. You've got those courtrooms that are big areas, and then they could be broken up to serve multiple needs. So it's possible, but you know, I can't say for certain whether or not it would be covered, but it would cover most of it. If that entire 21,000 square foot is in a state that it's not beyond repair.
So the old courthouse has several entrances. So it could be walled off or a separate entrance for the school board. And they can, you know, the school board office now is basically two hallways because it's not a school. So the top part is mostly the administration. The lower part is personnel and special needs and some of those other things. So I think it would be pretty easy without spending a ton of money to redo that building for both the county and the school board. I mean, I'm not talking millions, I'm talking a couple $100,000.
When you say the entire county, we've got a couple offices that were just two small
Right.
departments.
Right.
And then, you know, we were also thinking of social services, you know, with you know, where we would just keep them down in their lease facility. I know there was some talk about possibly bringing them into a county facility. Social services is a unique arrangement that if they're in a county facility, they pay rent. So that is one thing that could be considered if social services were moved into a county-owned facility. They would help cover the debt service.
Could the social service and the school board and the additional room you need for county employees fit in the old courthouse?
Mr. Chair, I would like to jump in on that one too, because Mr. Collins and I totally disagree on how much is savable on that building for cost wise. So first off would be whether that whole building can be used. And I'm thinking that we disagree on how much needs to be repaired in there.
So I've taken a good look at that building. I'm taking a good look at the school board building. And, you know, it's not rocket science. You know, make sure stuff don't leak, make sure it's air conditioning, heating, and the plumbing work. And then you cordon off what you need. You already have IT there. So that's not an additional expense.
Ms. Davis,
Isn't there an estimate already done on what the cost would be to repair that? And it was over $1 million just to keep it as is and to cover all the asbestos and everything that was in that building, according to the studies, Mrs. Sender.
That was done by Mosley, which is, you know, their 21,000 is really 7,000 real life.
It was a little higher than that, but the mold finally has to be mitigated in that building. It's still in there.
Because I read those reports.
So there, you know, there's keep going down the same pathways over and over in King George. So the problem with the mold there was the water was coming down off the roof. It was staying at the base of the building. It was creating mold in the building. So when they redid the parking lot, they put in pipes and moved that water away from there. The water's away from there now, so you don't have that problem. You go up on the roof, there's probably only one air handler that needs to be replaced. Some of them are just a couple of years old.
So do we just need to get another architectural person to come out there and see what the cost would be to get it up to par, to see if we could use it?
Well, what I'm trying to communicate is that I don't think it would take much to get it up to par. And then the question is, how much space would be needed for these, whatever one in there?
No, I would like to have a little bit more research done on that before we make this. You have one opinion, I have one opinion, and other people here might have another opinion. But have you recently been in there? There's quite a bit of damage, including when one of the ceiling tiles collapsed and actually damaged some equipment. And there seems to be a lot of work that needs to be done there. And how much do we want to spend to renovate everything? That building was put together in 5 different times at different costs, going back to the 50s, the 70s, 1923. It's just, you know, you'd like to save it all, but I just want to know if we're spending good money after bad.
So, but here's my argument to you, Ms. Zinder. So for 20 years, nobody's done anything to anything in King George County pretty much, other than a new courthouse. So if you keep letting these buildings be like they are, they're going to be like the school board office. So you have to, it's not really rocket science. You can go up on that roof and you can see where the problems exist. You fix it, you have a good roof, keep everything dry. That means you don't have mold if you keep things dry. You've mitigated the damage on the bottom. You know, when you come in the front of the courthouse, there's a big reception area. That could be 3 offices right there. So it's not the same thing with the courts. The courtroom could be 3, 4 offices, and don't forget about the judges' chambers back there. There's a whole hallway in the back, and the holding cells, and 4 offices back there. So I think the configuration could work without a ton of money.
Mr. Chair, so what would the difference between the $1.8 million that the study was and the $200,000 that you think it's gonna, what is realistic? Like, somewhere in the middle is realistic,
2 things. I was talking about the courthouse.
right?
Now you're talking about the bug tech.
No, you said that the Mosby study for the courthouse you do was
21 million.
21 million, okay. And you're saying how much it's gonna cost, you're guessing?
Oh, the PC's expert
Correct.
opinion?
Correct. So I mean, I
I
just
would
think
say
that,
no more than $5 million.
Yeah, the 1.8 was for the school board office.
right.
I agree that things can be fixed. I'm just worried about code of everything. I think there's so much code out there that you got to follow and build things nowadays. And are you saying that we would just use local government to, instead of like an architectural firm?
So first off, you have to have a plan. That's where everything falls apart.
Who would do that plan?
The plan for the building,
Yes.
you'd have to have an architect,
Okay.
but not a $21 million
Okay.
project, is what I'm saying.
And then,
So you can tell them what your needs are. I need 36 or 40 employees for the school board. I need, Mr. Smolnick, the amount of employees that he wants to move over there, and then the social services, and see what could jive in that building for
yeah.
square
I
footage.
guess it's hard for us to plan on what we can do until the county knows what they're going to do with these buildings, to be honest. Because we're going back and forth, but really it's what y'all decide this building to be used or not before we can even have this conversation about moving into it.
Mr. Smolnick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just some rough numbers. Courthouse across the parking lot here, 21,000 square foot. Social services, right now, they are leasing 6,000 square foot. I know they're fully staffed, they're maxed out, so that leaves 15,000 remaining in this building. Second floor of where IT and engineering, 1,400 square feet. So that would leave 13,600 square feet for the school board. And I think their space analysis was 32,000. So approximately half of what their space needs analysis would be the delta left over that, that's to be left in that building if we moved social services, engineering, and IT.
But I think we also talked about moving Mrs. Dump over there.
Well, if Ms. Gump went over there, I'd put engineering over here, so I don't want to see that's just a switch.
Yeah.
But the school board office, the document that you have includes the preschool. So it's not accurate numbers, what I'm trying to say to you.
I don't think that 32,000 number there includes the people.
No, we
Can you
just
bring it
pulled out
back?
the admin.
Yeah,
The
that was
admin
just
side.
the admin section.
Was
I'll
it
bring it
like
back.
2,600 or 3,000 square
I
feet?
gotta find it again.
26,
And
20.
don't forget the historical society has asked to use part of the building. That goes back a long time that people had promised them a home in there.
So that's 2,600 square feet. There's still 21,000 square feet to that building. That's what I'm saying, 2420.
I mean, it also could have to be gutted. That's the other thing. It has electrical issues, a lot of things.
What does? The
That's-
courthouse?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
Wow, you haven't been in there in a while, have
Yeah,
you?
I've been in there. You tell me what, I mean, everybody always wants to have a Taj Mahal right down the street. There's nothing wrong with that building. You just put some money into it, fix it for the needs that we have, realistic needs. And it's not that tough. Even if the roof, you know, there's a lot of flat roofs up there. I've been up there. I see 3 or 4 places that, so they got knee walls that go up on top of these flat walls. And so you could do a small knee wall on this one, put a asphalt, you know, put a different roof up on there. It has asphalt.
Well, then we'll have to take a tour together. Maybe I need to put your glasses on when I go through it.
I don't know why everybody makes this so hard.
Mr. Bush,
It just seems pretty clear to me that we don't have the right information. Why don't we, Mr. Chair, make an agreement that we need a proper feasibility study of the old courthouse so we can see exactly, rather than, I know Ms. Bender has different feelings and TC has different feelings and we're just all over the place. So let's get some professionals in there. We kind of know the needs. We know how many what kind of space we need in the school board. We know what you guys are asking in terms of the needs that you have. So it sounds like in terms of square footage, that might work, but we need to get in there. Let's just agree to get some architects or professionals in there and find out exactly what it's going to take to renovate that building.
yeah. So, I mean, my whole perspective first is if we can agree that the old school board building is not the direction that we're going to go. Okay, so that's the main point for me.
Okay.
So once we get to that, I go, okay, fine. You know, that can be used for a field house or something in the community. It can be a great project. And then now we take our focus to the courthouse and we do a study on that to see what feasibility is about what can be used there. And we add on to that building. You know, because at the end of the day, if the goal is to have a centralized hub, then we make it work, right? Whether it's adding on to this building here. Right now, we need to figure out what that building is going to cost and what can be, you know, how we can cut that up and design it and use it for everything we need to do. And if we need to add on to that building, if we need to add on to this building over here, but just create that central hub. That's the main thing. So when we do agree on the old building, we're not going to dump any more money into that. That's good. Mr. Fellows?
I got a couple points. One, when we do the study, I'd like to make sure that we get what you guys really need and don't just replicate what you've got. 32,000 square feet seems really huge. I understand, you know, the need for bathrooms, the need for hallways and stuff like that. But what you have right now is oversized hallways that was designed for lots and lots of kids. You have big bathrooms that were designed for a lot of kids to get through efficiently, you know, during the middle of classes and stuff. So let's get you what you need, not what you have. And then the other point, I want to make sure that Kathy's point on the historical society didn't fall through the cracks. That kind of fell to the wayside. They're over in the courthouse now. And a lot of promises have been made in terms of space, you know, for them to be able to use it. I just don't want that to fall through because they have so much stuff that is actually stored, scattered around in a lot of houses around the county because there's no room in that little room that they've got over there. So I'm not saying that, you know, we give them everything that they want, but at the same time, I don't want us to inadvertently kick them out completely.
I'd hate to see that, and I'd like to see a way to keep them there and even give it a little bit more space. I think it would be ideal. And that's why I brought up maybe possibly adding on to the building and just utilizing whatever space we have over there better. So that would be good.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
So, Mr. Schmaltz, Dr. Boyd, member of the school board. Well, I'm talking to y'all too. How long would it take to do a feasibility study of the courthouse to fit all these things in there? I mean, we need to get on the fast track on these things.
I mean, I can reach out, you know, this week, but it's really going to be dependent on who's interested and what their schedule's like. So I mean, I can get on it and get the request out there by the end of the week if we need to.
And then how long would it take for them to do it? And what's generally, you know?
How about reach out,
And
find out, and then report back and let us
to
know what kind of time frame you have on that, okay? Whatever, because their schedule's going to dictate that as much as anyone. If it's going to be somebody who says 3-4 months from now, just keep looking through, you know, till you find somebody. All right, but we'll go by that.
Mr. Davis?
Yep.
So is there agreement amongst boards to try to put the school board, social services, and additional county employees in that building? Remove all the employees out of the school board office? Is that the agreement?
I think the agreement is to look into to see if that's feasible and see what it's going to cost to accommodate that over this, whether it means adding on to the building we have agreed that we're going to move out of that building over there as far as the school board goes, and try and attempt to have a centralized hub where everything can be located is what I'm hearing. That will make a price tag on that person's vendor.
Yes, I wanted to add, I like that idea, and I liked your idea of doing the feasibility, but I would like to have the feasibility also looking to add on to this building, because we have
Absolutely.
that.
That's fine.
I like
That's
your
fine.
hub idea, and then one other thing I want to bring up is the school board office, and that facility, that area is still owned by the school. So that has to be in consideration too. It's one of the few properties left that.
I would like to just verify with my board that they're all in agreement with this decision. I hear no objections. Okay.
I've been trying to look at everyone to see and engage where they're at.
We could sell the property and take the steps.
Yeah, I just think part of the problem in the past is that we couldn't make a decision for your old courthouse. So
Yeah.
we, looking at this as an option, of course, we love the idea because the current offices are not in the best shape. It's just that we couldn't, thank you, I guess it's the.
Better than the current
words that we could
courthouse.
say, 'cause it's better than what we got.
And don't we pay for like a cable that runs out there to connect those offices?
Yes.
We're
Yes.
paying for that. Right?
$26,000.
No, so that's been paid for through the,
E-rate fund.
E-rate. So that would have to be a consideration because there's server from schools over there and it goes to all 5 schools.
Yeah.
So,
That's what's that.
I think it has been looked at.
That would be we should consider that the feasibility study.
Absolutely.
right, you can't leave the servers over there and unattended.
And then, I don't know what kind of sense this makes for both boards, but depending on what is desired for that property, maybe that's something that could also fund the renovations here.
Yeah, my
Depending on
opinion,
how that looks,
Dr.
I don't-
Boyd, is that we need to fund these renovations and then, get rid of
Figure
that
that out.
property.
I know.
Instead of holding it on and let it fall apart. Can we jump on the career technical building?
That's what that's
Can
what
we
want to do.
just, Mr. Frank said something about making sure that we have enough space for IT and all the servers and things like that, not just, office space for it.
There's Quonset hut out there with them. So y'all need to go through that school board building. There's, I keep telling you about the dungeon down below. There's probably some kids down there that we don't know about. I mean, I'm serious, it's pretty bad. But you go back in the back and there's this whole section that has about 300 buffers that don't work. And 10 million maintenance parts. I mean, it make Home Depot look like a baby. So, I mean, that stuff needs to be trashed. We have a lot of stuff in the county that needs to be trashed too. I don't think that this cob, burnt, would all that stuff have to be put out for surplus on both sides? Didn't they do a list, Dr. Boyd, at one time of all the crap over there?
Before my time, but I wouldn't mind helping manage that and arrange it, because you're right, there is a lot of stuff that needs to go. There is a lot of stuff that needs to be stored too, and if we're moving on to the vocational conversation, maybe a storage solution would be part of that conversation. Joint storage, it doesn't matter what that looks like, honestly, as long as we have some place to put stuff, because if you're moving chess pieces around, getting stuff out of that building is probably step one.
So, Mr. Smolnick, the storage that we had in the CIP for us was 600,000. Is that the right number?
1.5.
I know the school had 1.5 million for their storage facility. I'm looking at our storage.
The cost of that one behind the courthouse.
No, the $1.5 million was for Dr. Boyd's request here. School board storage facility, 1.5 million. The county, I don't believe we had a storage facility in our request. I know there was one for the sheriff. Sheriff had a storage facility, a standalone project, but that was only for his equipment.
Mr. Stroud, can I ask Mr. Stroud a question? So, Mr. Stroud, a storage building that to store the schools and our stuff. Probably be a little bit bigger than the maintenance building. With your experience, what do you think that half or a third conditioned in a metal building like that would cost, generally speaking?
While he works that out.
So Dr. Boyd, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Dr. Boyd, the vocational building. We don't need a study to know that it needs to be done. So the abatement for the asbestos, you would spray the ceilings and you get rid of the tile. There'd be nobody in there, so the abatement would be not a major cost.
So I think this is more of a Mr. Young question. If we do renovate that building, do we at that point have to bring it up to code? And because it was a 1968 building, are there costly items that things that would cost quite a bit to bring it up to code? If that's the case, again, not my area of expertise, but would that be better served to have an architectural firm take care of, or would that be better? I think the route you're considering is working through our county engineering department and seeing if we can piece out the project. Which again, I think the end result is what we both desire. I'm indifferent about which way we go as long as we can get there.
So the old middle school, or the old high school, which is the middle school, that first part of the middle school was built at the same time the VOTEC was built. So there would be, it was, yep. Anyhow, so when they did the middle school, there was minimal amount of structural that was necessary to bring it up to par. There was some abatement for asbestos. Huh? So, I mean, we're talking about a building that we did, and we know that we can do that building too. It's just that I think we're, in King George, I think we put too much energy on doing nothing. That's where I'm pushing the envelope pretty far tonight.
And well, I'm pushing back a little bit because from my understanding, when you abandon a school has a higher standard. When you abandon a building, you have to bring it up to current code. And I probably technically, if that building is considered has been abandoned for school use for a relative long period of time.
That's a big question right now that needs to be answered, which we hope we get through some of these initial conversations. I think that's a pivotal question.
Because my understanding, my research on the old building, on the middle school building, was that when you take it out of service as a school, after a certain amount of time, you have to bring it up to the current code, which could be a challenge.
But we are using it for the school because it's our wrestling program, which is a part of our school.
And there's been,
so that might be the technicality that allows it.
There's been a lot of things continue staying in that building.
And our soccer smart sits in there.
Yeah.
It's being used.
No, you're right. I mean, I think we would just need an expert to be able to come in there and tell us what direction we can go in. I'm certainly not that person. I wouldn't mind continuing conversations with Mr. Young. I think we're all interested in getting to the end result as fiscally feasible as possible. If we can go the grandfather route and get those programs put into that building and we get there sooner, that's not a plan I'm opposed to at all.
Let's just move forward, yeah.
Yeah.
So Mr. Chairman, I mean, what's next? Or is this going to be kicked down the can down the road like, things have happened before? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to get a feasibility study and, another feasibility study and to put these things in the old courthouse and to do this with the CPE building. This is the need that we want for them to produce. You have to give them direction. They can't, you know what I mean? What's the direction?
I think that is the direction. I think that's what we pretty much said it. Like, we need to figure out what we can do in this building, or do we need to add on? And there's going to have to be some sort of study done in the old building as it is, to see if you'd rather have our engineers go out and take a look at it first. If it is something they think they can handle, it's a big problem. I have no problem with
That's
that.
what he's done.
Huh?
That's what he's done. Have you-
Well, he hasn't walked in the facility and looked behind the curtains yet. Mr. Young has.
No.
That would be the next step.
which is
But
coming.
we're waiting for the hazardous material study to come back. That's going to be on the 12th. Going to give us a better idea. I'm having a sidebar conversation with Mr. Smolnick over here to try to see if that's something we believe we can handle locally. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, and knowing, you know, what my staff is capable of, and then I think what this requires, I think are two different things. While Mr. Young is very capable of what he does, I think this is outside of his area of expertise. You know, he really hasn't been trained, qualified to look at the, you know, structural integrity, you know, hazardous materials. This is not his strength. So in my opinion, I think we'd have to go outside versus relying on Mr. Young to give us a clear, definitive answer.
All right. So the answer, Mr. Collins, in order to not kick the can down the road, we need to get a study done into the building. Right? Okay. So,
On that study, I'd like to recommend that, I like the idea of being able to grandfather clause in, you know, can save a lot of money, but part of that study, I would like to look at the various items that we're writing off, because some of those are, I mean, they're all there for a reason. Some of them matter more than others, and just make sure that, you know, we're keeping the kids safe. I mean, obviously that's one of the primary goals, but, you know, bring it in here so that the parents know that their kids are being safe too, and we're not just pencil whipping something just to save a buck.
Absolutely. Thank you.
all right. Does anyone else have anything about the facilities? I'm waiting on Mr. Shroud. He can always come back.
Mr. Davis, I just want to bring up one thing with the school board.
Yes.
Property that we keep in consideration. We've talked about this, and what I said earlier, that possibly could be used for county use, especially to save the pit. So I just wanted that as an option besides possibly selling it.
I know that one of the things we've been looking at is the fairground, right? One of the things that when we talk about a fairground, a place where you can, you know, there could be a flea market. People drive hours to flea markets. You have wine tasting. You can have rodeos. You know, you can just an event center that's kind of central in King George. It's not all the way out at Fieldston, so people don't have to drive into King George and spend their money. So it could be anything like that we create in the downtown area to get people into King George, gas stations, all of things. So that's how I look at that property. It's not something I'd like to unload or sell. I look at it as something that could generate money, or we build a field house. So whatever we do there, we generate revenue and activities in our county itself.
Mr. Chairman. So in our retreat, we talked a lot about these types of things. To have a center location in downtown King George, which the school board office is pretty much center location. You already have a pit, which would be an amphitheater. So, you know, tear down that building and you can start with the fairground. And so you don't sell the property, but you get rid of that building. And you can, right now, you could have a concert in that pit, you know, so then you can make money. So,
Chairman, we're going to sell the property so we can fix our teacher step pay.
what?
Well, we want to sell the property back to you so we can fix our teacher step pay, or however you say it.
We gave it to you for $1. Can we have it back for $1? True.
It's also quite a bit of chunk of property too, about 47 acres, if I remember right.
And prime.
So marching orders for us right now, just so I'm clear, plan to vacate that property in terms of any future plans. We'll look into a feasibility study on this end, and I'll work with Mr. Smolnick to express our needs in terms of the school board. And then moving on to the vocational center right now, work with an architectural firm to develop a feasibility study and get back to the board, both boards.
That sounds correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, one more thing on the CPE building. So the study's going to be for to put, what, I'm sorry. Huh?
Kathy's line, one more thing.
So the CPE building, are you going to ask specifically for the architect to give you a specific plan, such as calling it whatever you
Yeah.
want?
So that's what they've asked us so far, is to develop a vocational center that would serve the programs that we desire to put in there. They certainly want that information on the front end so that they can design workplaces that would accommodate those programs. For example, you know, an agricultural program would be different than a culinary program as far as the needs and the power supplies and things of that nature. I do have a list. We do a survey. We just did a recent survey on the number of interests that our students have in particular programs. We've reached out to some local folks. There's a lot of factors that go into these programs right now. Finding a qualified instructor is a big part of the conversation. The overhead, the capital costs are certainly considerations. But we do have some information on what we desire to move in that program that we'll share through this feasibility study.
Can we get all these things done, Mr. Smalling, Dr. Boyd, by December 2025? In other words, be in the buildings?
Be in the building?
Mm-hmm.
No.
I don't want to have to run again. You're going to force me to run again.
We can certainly get the feasibility studies done by then. I would hope.
I told my wife I would keep my mouth shut.
All right. Is there anything left on the facilities? Frank, Cleveland, Stuart, David, was distracted. Linda, anything else in the facilities?
I can always add one more thing, but
I know you can. Okay, Mr. Collins. Oh, they were divine. I love them all. Mr. Sellers is good.
So you mentioned before, you know, where we are with the preschool / K-5. Is there any marching orders that we need with that right now in terms of planning, or is that something that?
I don't think so, not right now. Okay. I think, you know, I think kind of what we're geared up to is that's something that's going to have to happen. But I think what we've done all this time is we build and we abandon and we don't take care of our assets. It's an ongoing cycle. So right now, what I'm focused on right now is, okay, that's something new that we're going to have maintenance and take care of. Let's take care of what we got real quick. Let's get an idea of what that's going to cost, how we're going to design this thing. And then we can move on to then we'll be starting talking about the schools and all that.
Okay.
When that's going to happen, yeah.
Okay. We've got some plans we're trying to work with some plans for capacity, vocational being one of them. Virtual is another one that we're exploring right now and trying to figure out if that creates a relief valve at all. We're over capacity at the high school and we're over capacity at Sealston Elementary. We looked at the variance question. I brought that up in the past. I can tell you once we analyzed our variance, what a variance is right now in our community is any of our staff members can bring their kids if they live out of county to King George, or with our 3 elementary schools, our community can request variances based on childcare needs or whatever that may be. So we took a look at those variances currently, and again, these change annually, but currently the variance situation is helping. We have more students requesting to leave Sealston right now, which is our school over capacity, and moving into our schools with lesser capacity. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that, but changing that right now wouldn't be something that would benefit us in terms of our capacity issues. Vocational will help, virtual will certainly help, but I know we've talked, and you guys have talked a lot about what our growth rate in the county is. We're welcoming about 80 new students a year right now, roughly. So we'll continue to keep you guys up to speed on where that stands in terms of each specific school building.
Is that 80 at all the schools combined?
K-12.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Boyd, I'm sorry. The presentation you have up there, slide number 3, the number of students enrolled in each one of the schools. How accurate is that? When was the last time these numbers were run?
That was done. Those are this year's numbers, probably about 2 months ago-ish.
Okay,
like that.
Cool. And at the top of the slide, it says 2% enrollment projection calculated. What does that mean?
I think you guys have done the same thing, and you've had some folks speak at public comment. What that is the best guess number I've gotten for growth in King George right now. Those numbers fluctuate all over the place. The census number right now, I want to say I pulled 2.3% growth rate for King George County. I've read things that have it up to 4%. I've read things that have it in 1%. So we're estimating about 2%. 2% on 4,500 kids right now is about 80 kids a year.
Okay. Bottom line, we're mostly overcrowded and growing.
Correct. Now, more specifically, our middle school has room. Our middle school, since the renovation, we've got about 1,100 students in the middle school. It was built for 1,500. So that's the one school right now that we've got some play with. Stillston's over capacity. King George L is approaching capacity. Potomac Elementary, we've bought some time with our modular, which is a nice modular out there right now. We've bought some time there. The high school, we're over capacity at the high school right now. It's built for 1,500. We're up around 1,510, 1,520, depending on what day you ask.
Mr. Collins.
So what, you know, in the schools, they talk about the consortiums, like, you know, there's, you know, sometimes there's a ton of sixth graders. Next year, there's not going to be a ton of sixth graders. What does that look like?
We've got pretty steady numbers growing right now. When I first started here, our class sizes were, you know, we had some class sizes that were in the high 200s. They're easily in the upper 300s, some over 400 right now. There's some bubbles, but not huge bubbles like there have been in the past that you're referring to. It's pretty steady across the board right now. We're seeing a decent amount of growth. We're trying to come up with growth plans that are fiscally, you know, neutral as best we can. There's certainly folks that would say, well, you can just add a wing onto the high school, or you can continue to, you know, those are expensive things for our community. You know, we certainly want to be good stewards to the community and what those needs are. So as far as high school right now, the vocational center would be huge. This virtual program is one that we're trying to get legs on. Those two things would help, but we're still seeing numbers that are pushing us over our peak at the high school.
I've heard different things. What's the number you're seeing of people who are interested in the virtual?
It's low right now. What we've seen at the school side is we've only got 2 kids right now on the school side that are interested in signing up. Today, we opened up registration for our homeschool students. That opened today. I've had some homeschool families reach out to us. They were interested in signing up today. So we'll have a better idea maybe by week's end as far as what that looks like. I can tell you from a capacity side, our students are the ones that we need to, you know, take on the program. From a funding side, homeschool students interested in the program is more beneficial. We get additional state funds through homeschool.
Mr. Chair.
One second. Mr. Stroud, you have an answer for it?
Yeah, so for 10,000 square foot, 160K for the building, for HVAC, electrical, concrete, 2 or 3 bay doors, 2 man doors. You're looking at about, rounding up, 600K on the commercial side. For the county, that's probably about $3 million.
That's how they do it.
So that's the storage use.
That's just the building, not the site work and concrete, right? That's the concrete.
It's concrete, not site work.
Okay.
So, and that's not like inside, like trying to build walls and stuff. That's just
the building.
a building, storage building with HVAC and electrical. I mean, you know.
Mr. Bush.
I just want to be sure I understood what you were saying, Mr. Chair, is that I heard you say that before we get into talking about building the new school, you wanted to be sure some of these other things were understood and taken care of, such as the school board office, which we talked about moving, and then the VOTEC, and we've had that discussion.
Is there, just to be sure I understand, is there something else that you want to see settled before we begin talking about, building the new school? And what are the other, you see what I'm saying? You had said you wanted to be sure all these other things are done before we move into talking about the school. What are there other things? What are they?
Yeah, you're talking about, we're getting ready to build the maintenance building. And now we're talking about a storage facility. We're talking about how much is it going to cost for us to renovate this courthouse over here. So it just really is taking care of everything that's on our plate right now. We have to have a plan. We can't do it.
Okay, no, I understand. I just want to be sure.
Yeah.
So at least here, 3 or 4 more things before we can even begin talking about building a new school.
Yeah, well, we're going to get an idea what those things are going to cost us to do. I mean, look, if it comes back to the courthouse is, $30 million to renovate.
No, I understand. I'm just concerned. I'm just concerned a little bit about capacity again. Is how long will it take to still go through those things? Are we talking about this coming year? Because if we don't start looking at building the new school soon, right now we can handle things, maybe even for another year or so. But we all know when in terms of the bond and breaking ground, we're probably, from the moment you make the decision, we're going ahead with it. We're probably 3 years away before we're going to be moving into the building. And I'm just worried that if we're not even close to that, then are we 4 or 5 years away and we're going to be in trouble?
Yeah, well, we'll have to get the things we got on our plate right now because we're already in trouble with some things. We're already, $130 million in debt and everything else, and counting. So there's a lot of stuff on our plate that is causing trouble.
Well, last comment, and then I won't speak anymore. We have communicated, through the referendum to the community that this is going to be done, and I'm starting to get word of when are they going to do it? I don't know what to tell them because they're saying, well, we already agreed to the 57 million, so when's it going? How come we haven't heard anything? So I guess I'm finding it difficult because that's going to continue to increase the longer we wait.
And we'll probably figure something out probably by the end of this year.
Okay.
Exactly what direction things are going to be going.
See, that'd be great if I could tell them something that maybe we'll finish these other things within a year and then we can.
You're good at answering questions without answering them.
It's not a good answer.
I get it. Anybody else on that? All right, you guys want to move on to the FY26 budget? You want to do that?
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, you want me to go ahead with the budget presentation? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Jeff, can you pull that up, please? Okay, I can work through this relatively quickly because I've already got my marching orders from TC over there to not talk too much. So. Well, I'm good. You good? Okay. All right, so we'll go relatively quick on this. I know you guys are interested mostly in the last slide, and I'm happy to say that the update of that last slide is a good one, depending on, given where we are right now. Moving through quickly, this is just our budget timeline. We are again in March, and we're on schedule. In fact, tonight, you can see in March, we've got our presentation to the Board of Supervisors, and I don't know if we're calling this the retreat or joint meeting, but here we are. My responsibility is to pull all of these resources together and come up with an operating budget, a need-based operating budget. Those are all those multicolored circles around the center circle there, which is me. I forward that to the school board. The school board is responsible for approving a needs-based budget. They've done that. So that first blue arrow has been complete. And here we are this evening delivering that second blue arrow to the Board of Supervisors. I know you guys are having to fit that into a much larger pie, and you've got many tough decisions to make with competing resources, but that's where we are right now. For school budgets, which are a little different than other county budgets, a big part of funding is dependent upon our average daily membership. That's the number of students that attend our schools. The state takes a look at this number in the fall, and they also take a look at this number in the spring. We're estimating next year that we'll have 4,475 students based on current numbers, and you can see how those spread over the last 5 or 6 years there. And again, I'll go quick on this because I know many would prefer that, but at any point, if you want me to slow down, if you have a question, just go ahead and holler and I'll stop.
Mr. Chair, I actually have a question on this slide because I've gone every day to drop off a student in the line, and is this number is not accurate for how many kids actually come during the day. This is average daily for the year, correct?
So the way the state does this is they take a measurement on September 30th, and then they take a measurement on March 31st, and then they average those, but it's not just the whole number either. It's based on the number of students multiplied by the number of days that they're in attendance. So it's a multiple of numbers. So to answer your question in short, yes, it's just an average.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because some days there's less cars in the parking lot.
Yeah. So again, we went through some of our population growth numbers right now. I can go through this quickly. This just shows that we are, and again, this is one of those articles that showed we had a growth rate over 4%. I know that's debatable, but we are a red county there. We are growing, according to this anyway, Weldon Cooper. Our local composite index, again, this is one of the outdated ways that Virginia schools have been funded in the past. I know you guys know about and have talked about the JLARC study. The JLARC study really criticizes this approach. It's one that we hope they go away from. However, the local composite index, the state takes all 132 school divisions and really ranks them by 3 values: the true value of real estate property, adjusted gross income, and taxable retail sales. Our composite index is 0.3633. We're in the 2nd year of that number. They reassess those numbers every 2 years. So what that means is we should be responsible, and this is honestly a suggestion. The local government should be responsible for 36% of the budget, while the state is responsible for the reciprocal of that. True value, we rank 55 in the state, 55 out of 132. Adjusted gross income, King George rates 50th. Taxable retail sales, we rate 70th. And as far as funding for public schools, we rank 106th right now. And I know we all adopted these things. This is by no means, a criticism of our board or anything like that, but this is where we are today. I've got some sources in there. The JLARC study is a great one to review. If Ms. Bender, I know you're deep into that. It shows a lot about where school funding should be going in the state of Virginia. If you take a look at this graph here, what you'll see is, where we sit right now in terms of our income, our average income, and our average school funding. We're that red dot up there in the top left-hand corner, meaning that we have a high income level, but a lower per pupil expenditure right now in the county. So again, I'm going to get through the meat of this. Some of that stuff was part of our initial budget presentation. We align our budget currently in King George County Schools to our strategic goals. You guys know this from the past. Our 4 strategic goals quickly are now goal number 1, employee investment and development. 80% of our operating budget is educator teachers. So we focus heavily on making sure that we invest in our employees. Goal 2 is quality instruction. Goal 3 is community collaboration, and goal 4 is has to do with our facilities. Every year we ask our staff if they have what they need in terms of equipment, supplies, and programs. And every year since I've been here, and I think even before that, these numbers pretty much come out this way. 9 out of 10 of our teachers believe they have the equipment, supplies, and programs they need to satisfy their budget, or excuse me, to do their job. These are our budget initiatives based on our strategic plan goals. The first of which is to increase our salaries by 3%. This 3% number right now is one that's prevalent across the state. All school divisions have pretty much adopted it. I think county offices have adopted it. It was recommended by the governor and also by the most recent budget from the General Assembly. Yes, sir.
So 3% from the General Assembly. How many SOQ positions?
It only covers the SOQ position.
Right. How many are there?
It's about half of our workforce.
So would be on the hook for $1.8 million Or would be on the hook for half of that?
for less than that. Yeah, and I'll go through that at the end here, towards the end. But that's what Mr. Collins is hitting on as a former school board member and board of supervisors member is exactly, this is the challenge. They peg our local leaders with the remainder of that cost. So when the General Assembly says that they're going to provide a 3% salary increase, what they're really saying is that they're just going to provide a 3% salary increase for SOQ positions. And if you read that JLARC study, the SOQ positions are not what you need to run a school. Every school division in the state of Virginia hires almost twice as many staff positions as there are in the SOQ. It's one of the things they say is outdated in the JLARC study. So what does that mean? It puts our local governments on the hook for the difference of that 3%. And that's the challenge every year. We want to increase our hourly pay scales for building level secretaries. We've lost a lot in the last year. We've lost a lot of building level secretaries. This includes our registrars. So we want to make that a more competitive pay scale so that we don't lose them. We brought this to you last year. We're bringing it again. We need to adjust the pay scale compression. We're going to take a look at a different avenue this year. We want to take a look at step 10, incrementally working away from this. And I'll show you why this is an issue in the next slide. But the cost of that is $436,000. And I'll go to the next slide. This is why we need to adjust that compression. Again, we're competing for qualified teachers. And we're really competing for those teachers in the school divisions that surround us, which are Stafford, Spotsy, Colonial Beach, Caroline, Westmoreland, and Fredericksburg. When we pulled this data, which was just a few months ago, what you see is the teacher salary for each of those corresponding years. So for example, King George's first year teacher salary is $50,500. The highlighted cells is the school division that has the lowest salary for those particular areas. So we're very competitive in year one, and really we're competitive in years 15, 20, 25, and 30. Where we fall off right now because of that compression, and again, I won't go through all of that, but basically this was a process that took place through the economic downturn, and it still lives in our pay scales. What is created is lower than desirable salaries in years 5 through 10. So that compression scale that I mentioned in the last slide begins to address this need. Healthcare increases. I've talked to Mr. Smolnick. I think we're about in the same boat in terms of increase. When we first got word from our healthcare broker, we were expecting a 20% increase, now down to 12%. So that's going to be a cost saving across the board. Our school board has agreed right now through motion to pick up that cost for our employees. Again, with a modest raise, picking up that cost is something that encourages our employees to stay with us. Strategic Plan Goal 2, again, we're in our second year of providing access to the Academy of Technology. This is ATI, that's the tuition for that program. The second goal there is additional staff to accommodate increased enrollment and academic needs. I'll go through those specifically in a slide coming up. And again, you guys remember the Virginia Literacy Act and the requirements associated with that. That's a staffing position or positions associated with that. Goal 3, we need to update our website platform. I think you guys have recently done that, and we certainly need to do that as well. I'm going quick here, but feel free to stop me if you need me to. Goal 4, finally, is safe and healthy school environments. That's our Project Kind. That's that's an initiative that we have been running with. The second one is the cost of the virtual Virginia program. And then the third is the cost of the attendance person that you'll see towards the latter part of the presentation. All right, so here we'll get into the meat. I'll slow down a little bit. I've given you guys all budget books. You can go deeper into the budget book if you'd like. What you'll see is these increases associated with these departments, and the bottom line increase for the budget book right now is $1.5 million, and the real meat of that is coming in our operations and maintenance line. You can see that's $900,000. Additional staffing requests are, again, for the Virginia Literacy Act, it's 2 reading teachers. As we're seeing everywhere, most certainly in Spotsy and Stafford, but in King George as well, we have an increased need, and in fact, it's an increased need according to the SOQs for an ESOL teacher, and then for the Virginia Literacy Act for paraprofessionals. We do need to increase, as I move down to high school, we do need to increase our teaching positions at the high school. Our student-to-teacher ratio there is getting a little higher than we're comfortable with the increase in enrollment at the high school level. And there you see the cost for the virtual instruction coordinator and then the attendance intervention specialist I mentioned before. So up and down the line, the major differences in FY25 and 26 are the 3% increase in the salary, the compression cost. Renewal rate now is 12% for health insurance. Budget builder request is 1.5 million, and additional staff is 982,000. Again, those aren't costs to the local government; those are total costs. So now this is the important part of this. This is where you guys are most interested. So if you take a look at where the revenue is coming from right now, we first, when we met with the school board and we were considering where everything shook out, we were working off the governor's budget. The governor's budget came out at December 18th. And really, when you took a look at state revenue, federal grants, and other funds, the local request was going to be to the Board of Supervisors $4.1 million. Since the General Assembly's budget, both House and Senate budget has come out and the calc tool has come out, that number dropped by nearly $1 million. It dropped to $3.1 million. And then we took away the savings that we would have from the new healthcare increase. So the local request from the school board to the Board of Supervisors, as it stands today, is $2,812,034. And I can stop there for any questions. That's as accurate as it is right now based on the General Assembly's budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just got three questions. Can you explain to me what is a building level secretary? You say you want to make them more competitive, but looking at those numbers, secretaries on the base don't make nearly that much, and they're tracking security clearances, travel, training, whatnot for 150 or more people. What is the building level secretary?
So I think that cost you're seeing is the total package cost. It's not like
including healthcare,
including healthcare, including everything.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you. ATI went from 59,000, give or take, last year, 59,000 and change, to 71,000. That's nearly 20% increase. Are we putting more kids in it, or did it just really get that much more expensive?
Same amount of kids. It's going to be a slightly matriculating cost because what ATI is going to do is they're going to start weaning off of federally a grant program. So once they're entirely off their grant funds, that's about what we'll pay in terms of tuition for 7 students.
Do we have any kind of data to indicate that those 7 students that we had this last year gained anything from this?
Anecdotal data right now, but we've visited. I can tell you, it looks like a very promising program.
Okay.
It's in cooperation with University of Mary Washington. Mr. Bush and I have attended. We serve on the board for ATI with Mary Washington. It seems like a promising program right now for those students, and we've had students that have said they anecdotally they're impressed with what they've seen so far.
So you two get to be a participation in I guess driving this thing.
Yeah, if I could say something, I've seen a lot of programs in my career, in education, and this is one of the finest programs I've ever seen. And what's really interesting about it, this isn't just for the high level students. It's almost as if we take because it's a lottery system. But it's like we take these average kids and they're getting, I wish we could do this for all of our students, because these kids are going to skyrocket. It is. If we have some time, we'll talk to you about some of the things that we saw just in that day that we spent there. It was phenomenal.
Okay, good deal. And the last question is, why did we decide to offer Virtual Virginia for free if it's going to cost us more money?
So what will happen with Virtual Virginia? So you're talking about the virtual program.
Mm-hmm.
When we have outside students that want to attend the virtual program, we will net roughly about $5,000 from the state for each homeschool student that's interested in attending the virtual program.
So the cost in here is offset by more money from the state that we're.
We hope so. And again, it's very much in a kind of a pioneering exploratory phase right now. It's a factor of how many main school students we get, meaning currently enrolled students. Currently enrolled students are going to help us with capacity. They're not going to help us with funding. Students that are outside of our school division, whether homeschool, private school, whatever that may be, that decide to join the program, there's benefits for them. You know, they can, anytime I've ever been in these homeschool conversations, we've had a number of homeschool meetings. They're interested in certain components of public education, but not others. So things like participating in the athletic program, extracurricular activities, theater program, things like that, they can have access to through the VHSL program, which is a great avenue for them. So it benefits them there. It benefits us on that side in terms of funding. The total cost for the virtual program for those students to us will be $2,000, but we'll net much more than that.
Okay.
And I'm hoping, depending on that cost for that virtual instructor there, or excuse me, that virtual director, is dependent upon a couple things. How big the program begins to be. If it turns out that we don't get as much interest as we thought we would have, I'll come back to my board, I'll come back to you guys and say, hey, I think we can handle this based on our current staffing demands. We certainly don't need the position if we don't need the position. But if it grows big enough, we will certainly need the position. That's a factor too, though, of how many homeschool students decide they want to go into the program, because we can certainly potentially pay for that position through those funds that we gain.
Okay. I apologize, Mr. Chair. That brought up one more question.
Go ahead.
What kind of quality control is involved in this? My fear is that it's going to turn into a homeschool light program. We homeschooled our kids, you know, and I like the program. I'm a product of public education. I like that program. Mm-hmm. Over the years, we've met some people that I'm like, oh, you poor child, you're not learning crap. Yeah. What kind of quality control do we have to make sure that the kids are not suffering because parents don't want to take them to school, but they're not really homeschooling them either?
Sure, good question. So this is a state-approved Virtual Virginia program. We've actually had students for years. We've had some students do the full program. We've had students for years take singleton courses. We've used it in the past for things like, you know, we have a student that comes in and says, I want to take Mandarin Chinese, but we don't teach it, right? So we've used it in that way. I can tell you that through COVID, when we were exploring this program, and many other school divisions use it now as well, actually, the conversation goes to how rigorous it is. It is a very, very rigorous online program. Some equate it to like Liberty University, who has a very strenuous online program, if you've ever taken classes that way. In fact, what we try to let parents know and students know is that this is no light program. This program is one that involves a lot of rigor. Another good point that is important for the community to know is that this is a synchronous program. You are logging on to a teacher at a particular time. This is not like a COVID asynchronous, let me email you an assignment, you email it back to me kind of thing. From everyone we've spoken to, it's a demanding program, and we want to make sure people know that, because I think it's going to be one that'll shock some folks, honestly.
Cool, thanks very much. I like those answers.
Yes, sir.
And those people would be taking the same tests and things like that as far as how they're doing in school. What's the name of those?
SOL.
They'll be taking the same SOLs and all that, right?
They take the same SOLs, and they also, another benefit of this program is they also get the Virginia State approved diploma. They have to take the same high school courses and pass the same high school courses, or repeat the same high school courses that our enrolled students take now.
All right. Would you have a question? What is the impact on school lunches?
I'll say that again.
What is the impact on school lunches?
What would the impact be on school lunches in terms of this program right now?
Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, this program.
Yeah, right now I think it'll be minimal. We have 2 students enrolled in the virtual program that would be coming out of the school and into the virtual program. The expectation right now for our homeschool students, although I'm sure we couldn't work something out, but the expectation, I don't believe, is that we're not serving lunch to those students.
Ms. Collins?
Yes, sir. Thank you. How many employees are employed by the schools at this point?
741. 741.
741.
Those full and part-time. Full-time, part-time with contract and long-term subs.
How many vacancies?
Do you know how many vacancies we have? It's lower than it's been. We're actually making pretty good strides there. Are you looking for breakage number?
Yep.
Yeah. Would you like me to email that to the board when we get a better idea of that?
Okay.
I don't know that I'll be able to arrive at that with you tonight.
Okay. How many? You know how many counselors there are?
Total number of counselors.
And how many social workers?
And social workers. I think social workers is an easier one. We have one per school right now. I think we're up to 5 social workers.
5.
$13 total counselors and social workers. 5.
Okay. What was the total? 14?
And 5 social workers.
And it's just 180,000 on your budget builder for one counselor?
Where are you looking?
Budget builder increases by department? Is that added a position or does that?
So you're looking at requested positions?
Budget builder increases by department. I don't
Okay,
have
so the budget builder increase by department wouldn't be position. Are you? I'm trying to follow you. You're looking at. Oh, you're looking on that page. Okay. So the counseling. You're talking about the increase of 80,455.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you look into the budget builder, if you have your book, you would turn to the white tab. And you flip over to the second page, it's in this blue section, and you can see the increase of 80,455. Your question is mainly what do those equate to?
Is it a position?
It's not a position. This is, I'll tell you specifically. If I get past the summary, you might be able to pull it up faster too. Sure. Yeah, it's a lot of different things. So project kind, are you looking at the same place I'm looking? That's that 15,000 up there. We have DOMA student records collection. So this is basically our effort in digitizing our records. We haven't digitized our records in King George. They've been paper boxes that have been stowed away in places, and we've worked on digitizing those. That cost is $13,455. If you go through the budget book, it'll go through all of those increases. But to answer your question, it's not specific. It's not at all a position.
And the 917,000 for operations and maintenance.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up. We're getting ready to go through this renewal with Honeywell. And I think it's going to be a hard conversation. We've really kind of dissected that Honeywell contract. And, without going too deeply into that, the contract breaks down into 2 areas. First, over the top, what we signed up for 5 years ago, or I think it was 5 years ago, is what's termed a flex program. What this flex program does is it provides maintenance or replacement for certain parts of our equipment. The parts of our equipment that it covers is our new equipment. As soon as those pieces of equipment work their way out of what they consider the industry standard as far as age, they entirely drop them. It's something that we're going to talk about. If you take a look at the contract breaks down into two areas, in my opinion, general areas. The first area is automation. This is the energy efficiency stuff. That's about a third of the contract right now, and it's one that has all Honeywell proprietary equipment. We don't have to continue to go with Honeywell, but we have all of their equipment right now. It's about a third of the contract. The other 2/3 of the contract, if we look at it, is maintenance and preventative maintenance. We're spending a lot of money. That contract right now has matriculated up to over $300,000. The renewal for that is about $321,000, I think is what it is. So we're going to take a hard look on that contract and whether or not we intend to stay with it. What we're doing with that increase right now is mitigating some of the increased HVAC costs that we know we're going to have. Right now, if you get into, I don't know how deep into the weeds you want to go on that, but right now, King George High School's units are 18 years old. Honeywell they don't consider that. I mean, they'll do maintenance if we request it, but we're paying for it. Any types of replacement on those, we're paying for. King George Elementary School's units are 28 years old. Potomac Elementary School's units are only 13 years old, but they're a different system altogether, and we've had a decent amount of issues with them. So what we're attempting to do is mitigate some of those costs that we're seeing through our Honeywell contract. We will negotiate and talk to Honeywell about that contract and see where we can come out of that with. But that's what we're trying to do with those increased costs in me.
So are you trying to cover a CIP item, or are you trying to, is this going to be a reoccurring expense? I don't quite understand.
It'll be the replacing of, I don't think they exceed 50,000. So the maintenance costs that we've put on those right now don't reach the CIP level, but from King George High School, King George Elementary School, and Potomac Elementary School, we're doing a ton of repairs right now on those HVAC systems that don't exceed 50,000, and I can get you those specific numbers if it would be helpful, but we're putting a lot of money into those right now, and we're trying to figure out how to do it not through emergency POs.
So out of the 917, 300 was a Honeywell contract for the 2/3?
No, that's not for the Honeywell contract. The Honeywell contract is entirely separate from that.
Okay, so 917 covers what?
So if you look in your budget book again.
Principal, I didn't bring my budget builder. Sorry.
All right, I can walk you through some of this. Do you want to go through some of those costs? You got it there.
Let's talk about those two. What are those numbers? Electricity and propane.
You said electricity and propane. Do you know what that cost has gone up?
It's gone up,
For both? Or each?
Total electrical has gone up $495,172. It's estimating that right now it's at 1.2 million, and Gary's got it going up 1.7. Service authority utility bills have gone up from 98,000 to 166,000. Propane fuel.
Why is that?
Why is that?
Why is the service authority going up in that amount?
I'm going to say probably usage.
Mr. Chairman,
Are you using more water for sewage?
I was told that with the school year starting earlier, this is by maintenance, that it's put such a strain on our HVAC systems because it's so hot outside. In previous years, the students weren't in, so we weren't running it at that high level. So that's part of why it's so much higher.
Yeah, that's, and I know you've been looking into that too on the county side here, TC Musk. And,
So,
I would,
so the propane, how much is the propane, ma'am?
Quarles is going up 2% increase is what they've given us.
What's your total?
Right now, it's at 84,000 going up to 86,000.
And how much per gallon?
I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on that one.
Okay. So, I don't know, Mr. Smallman, Dr. Boyd, so that's a big issue here in the county. We're paying way too much money for propane, and I imagine you are too. So, I don't know if you can do a combined operational contract to save a ton of money. And the electricity, Dr. Boyd, that's $4.95, up $4.95. So that's one. So how much is the electricity total?
We got it at 1.7 million.
1.7 million. How many buildings?
I'm sorry.
How many buildings?
That would be, we have 7 accounts, I believe it is.
7 accounts.
Yeah.
5 school buildings.
5 school buildings, transportation, and the school board office. And the field house at the high school.
So it went up $4.95, but Honeywell's on a 20-year contract for their energy management. There was only supposed to be a 2% raise every year. If you put up from last year and this year, you're way over that number in your contract. So there was an escalator for electricity costs.
there's a 3% escalation clause in the Honeywell contract
For the cost of electricity or their fee?
for their fee.
Right. I'm talking about the cost of electricity. They had that included in their contract of what the escalation should be of electricity. So if their contract is a guarantee, so if they're wrong, they pay.
Yeah, we can look
Oh,
at
I'm pretty familiar with that.
Yeah, no,
If they're wrong, they pay. That was part of the deal.
we're meeting with them on the 17th.
Which representative are you meeting with?
Joyce.
They'll just run you around in circles. You won't do this meeting.
Well, we're in a renewal year, so we'll cut to the point.
So check on that contract because that was very important decision for the Board of Supervisors and the school board on.
I'll get with you. We can talk some more about it. I'd be interested in that.
And you're going to get with Mr. Smollett on the propane.
Yes, sir.
And so that takes up out of that 917, the escalation of those energy costs. How much total out of that 917?
The is 495,000.
So you have another 500,000. Where's that?
You got an increase in purchase services of 295,000, an increase of the utilities totaled of 565,000. You got an increase of 67,000 in utilities, 2% increase in propane. Let's see. Custodial supplies, he's got an increase of 40,000. Those have gone up 7%.
What? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
This custodial supplies have gone up 7%.
Looking at your budget builders, propane went up closer to 25%. I mean, it was 1925 and now it's 2,500. The difference is 575. The 2% is on your fuel oil.
I was going off of the 2% fuel increase cost that he's put in there.
The total there is 565.
565.
I'm trying to get to the base of all.
Chair, I'm jumping, service authority related, that would, we had not raised the rates on the service authority, so that would be most likely water and sewer usage, because there was no rate change in the past year.
I've had a request for a 5-minute break. Is anyone good with that? All right, let's take a 5-minute break. turns into 10. Because that's Jesse. That's Jesse.
What's it gonna be, like $60,000?
Notice throw it on the miscellaneous.
Well, that's an opinion.
All right,
Some
you
people
guys
do
ready?
use that.
Gals ready? All right. Go back. Miss Bender, didn't you have something?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. So
All right.
I'm going to hone in on Virtual Virginia, because as you know, with any program we initiate, eventually, if there's a grant or something, we eventually have to fund it. That goes for any county program or virtual program. My concern with this virtual program is, one, is if only two students, say only two students sign up, that's a lot of money for two students. The position, from my understanding, that 144,000 is based off of Stafford, which is a totally different population. They have 12 schools. And my other, with having this Virtual Virginia, you mentioned it earlier about the homeschool. It's about getting state funding that we currently don't have. And one of the big pushes that I know I'm going all over the place, but it all goes back together, getting kids back to school with COVID, was that they wanted them in the classroom, not online. So to me, this seems like we should have done some more vetting in the community to make sure the community really wants this Virtual Virginia program, because it does have a big price tag.
So let me say this first. If we don't, again, reach the demand that we expect to have, then I'll be the first to tell you that we won't need that position. And I think by maybe weeks in, depending on how many homeschool students we have interested in the program, that'll be telling. We have registration open until the end of the month. Is that what the closing date was? Okay, we've talked a little bit about contingency plans. If we don't get enough demand, then we will certainly remove that position from the budget.
What's that number?
144 right now, and it's based off our salary scale. It's not based off of, and that's not the salary. That's
Yeah, I'm saying, what's the number you're looking for people being involved
for the number of,
in order to keep it around?
I think in this first year, if we get up to, what are we shooting for, 25? That would be more than enough to 25 students. Yeah. And so to answer, I don't know how philosophical we want to get into this right now. It's kind of a budget conversation. We learned a lot through COVID. I did my dissertation on online credit recovery. There is a population of students that this type of program services quite well, in fact. It's not necessarily, it's not that we, well, I may not say it that way, because we do want students face-to-face. We prefer that. There's some students right now that are having a difficult time doing that. Chronic absenteeism is a focus of ours right now, a focus of every school division. We're really trying to figure out how to connect with a certain population of students since COVID. One of the ways some school divisions that have been very successful, Henrico, for example, if you want to look up their program, they have an entire virtual academy. Stafford's in the first year of their program, and they have a little over, is it 100 students? What was the number there in their program? No, I'm talking about the total number of kids in their virtual program. 115, I thought. Yeah, I thought it was about 115 students. So we've been able to work closely with their director right now. I can tell you, I'm impressed with the rigor of the program. I'm impressed with the way it connects with certain kids. It's going to be a program that we are that we keep close tabs on, because as I learned through doing my dissertation, it's not by any means a catch-all. It's not a program that is going to service a certain kind of kid at all. You have to be self-motivated. But we also have a decent population of kids since COVID that are very anxious about coming back into a school building. We have adults that are very anxious about coming into facilities right now. And we're trying to figure out ways to service those kids and provide them as much opportunity as we can. And this is a way that we can do that right now. Was there another question that you had, or?
Well, jumping off that, I do know during COVID, I learned about a program that they started in Southwest Virginia, but that was a regional program where they, understanding that you were not going to get as many kids virtually, they shared the cost within their region. This needs to be,
the cost, that's what you were mentioning.
Mhm.
So the cost is, it's actually a net positive for us. If you look at, again, if you take a look at a homeschool student, that's a no-brainer. That's a student that we currently receive no state funds, no state, federal, or local funds for at all. We would be accepting new state funds for those students in the amount of about $5,000 per student is what we've estimated. Total virtual Virginia tuition is $2,000. So the net gain for a homeschool student to the school division would be about $3,000 per student. If you look at the per pupil expenditure cost, I mean, we're up, around $12,000, $13,000. Again, total tuition for virtual Virginia for those select students that this would be appropriate for is only $2,000. So
that's per student?
That's per student for full-time enrollment. That's total full-time enrollment.
Is that 6,000? Is that including federal funds?
5,000. That doesn't include the federal,
So
any
it's like
federal funds.
12,000 total, and 5 is the county, and the rest is federal.
It breaks down to state, federal, and
You'll
local.
get that from the federal too,
We get federal funds as well. Yeah.
even for the virtual Virginia enrollment students.
Not many. I mean, our federal funds break down into title programs, Title I, Title II. So you've got your disadvantaged students, Title I, special education students, 6B. They fall into different areas. The total amount of federal funding that we get right now, since it's the topic of conversation, for the school division is about $2.1 million total.
If I can just, regarding this, I just looked at some current research, what I studied also, and your dissertation is in this area too, is that if we get homeschoolers to come to this program, homeschoolers are very successful with online programs because that's where they've been, most of them. 78% has a massive amount of success in online. Students who are currently, like with COVID, who were in public school and they do online, it's only about 20% of our students that are successful. That's why when COVID hurt the public school so much is because only really 20% were able to excel using any online or virtual programs during COVID. But any of these students that we could get from homeschooling to do this program, they'll be extremely successful. 78% do very well with online programs if they come from homeschool situations. Anyway, just to show you the success of the program is even greater.
I'm not arguing the success. I mean, it's a focus to try to get homeschool kids to get state funding. That is also too. So I just want to, or they want to do theater or.
Yeah, I think it's beneficial for, in speaking with our homeschool community, there's great benefit for them as well. Like I mentioned earlier, we've had homeschool families that really want to participate on the football team or be part of the theater program or, NJRCC is always one that comes. There's a number of programs that come up. This kind of gives them an avenue. The TiVo rule that we've talked about for so many years with homeschool students not being able to access VHSL activities. This is a way where our homeschool families can be served. And I think we know that we have an extremely high percentage of homeschool students in our community, percentage-wise, more so than our surrounding school divisions.
I think one of the highest.
We're one of the highest.
Yeah. Now, I'm going next at the, I'm glad you mentioned the operations and maintenance because that was a big question I had. One of the other positions, the attendance position. So where my concern comes in, kids know how to game the system. They know when to come, how long they can be out, and then they come for a couple of days, and then they go back out and they come back. So what are we trying to do? Are we trying to go out and do like, I know GWRC wanted to do for the regional approach for the homeless, is go and find out why and do we need two people for that? Is there a way we can use Power School to create more reports so one person can do it? I mean, what are we looking to do here?
Sure, no problem. Right now we have, like I said, most school divisions in the state are experiencing chronic absentee numbers of like over 20%, meaning 20% of your students have missed You just found out you're a student rep. So King George, as well as other school divisions around us, are experiencing very high chronic absenteeism numbers post-COVID. The definition of chronic absenteeism is missing 10% of the school year. So that's our kids are missing about 18 days of school a year. We have one truancy person, Jeff Smith, does a fine job. Right now, he spends 1 day a week at every single one of our schools. So you can imagine, he spends Monday at King George High School. He doesn't come back to King George High School until next Monday to address any type of truancy issue. I can tell you what Mr. Smith does a great job of is probably what you just referred to as the gamers, right? The discipline situations, OSS situations, and just old school truancy, kids that are gaming the system, as you put it, trying to not come to school. What we're finding is that what we really need in terms of the other part to make that, truancy push a whole, and we've learned this really through, we received grant funds through All In, and we've done a few things. What we're hoping to find in this new truancy position is somebody with a social worker degree, because we don't have, it's not just gamers out there that are not coming to school. It's some mental health issues. We need somebody that has a social work background similar to what we work with in the county, and see if we can't go into those homes, connect with those individuals, families and students, forge relationships, which takes a person. And we've started to do a good job of it. We've employed a lot of our teachers to go make home visits, and we're seeing positive results from that. Having somebody with the skill set of being a social worker to go into that family and say, hey, here's some services that we can work around this situation, and here's how we want to get you back in school, I think is an added component to our truancy program that we currently don't have right now. Jeff does a great job on the truancy end of things, the gaming end of things, but there's a part of it right now that I think we can improve upon. Yes, sir.
So Dr. Boyd, when are we going to start holding parents accountable? So let's get them in court. You get a couple of them in court, that'll send a message that your child needs to come to school. So instead of going to their house and coddle them, you need to go to their house and get the parent in front of the juvenile justice system.
Yeah, that's something, as far as working with the county, there are situations that require a deeper approach. And we'd be happy to, there's no silver bullet with this truancy question. There's some that we can address with some means. And there's some that I can tell you when I was in Richmond County, we had a great relationship with court services. The judge used to come out and speak to the students in the school. It was successful when we were talking about that portion of the population. Not something I'm opposed to when it comes to that portion, but that's only part of the pie right now when it comes to truancy.
Well, all these parents that aren't being accountable, your school system, they have requirements to have their child go to school. So put it on, you got to put it on the parents. Period. Instead of coddling everybody and say,
Send them to jail.
Send them to jail.
Just, we've talked about all these things as far as truancy. I promise you, Mr. Collins, that the school board, yes, the administrator, we are working diligently. The very things you're talking about, I especially think of Mr. Frank. We have spent a tremendous amount of time talking about home visits, what the social workers can do. We're dealing with the court, working with the courts a little bit more. I promise you, we've talked about all of these. I just want you to know that thank you for your concern, but we really are doing our job and trying. That's one of the goals that we have had, is to try to decrease the chronic absenteeism.
Well, I bet you have to send a deputy by there in school.
We do that too.
We've talked about that. Yes, Mr. Collins, we are.
I want to jump in because I wasn't done in, but when I knocked on a lot of doors to get my certification again to run for office, you'd be surprised at how many people have a frank conversation with you about not only the school board but we're board of supervisors, but about the school board And I asked one person, that's not our purview, but they said, but it is, you control the money. And something has to be addressed, and it has to be in the public we all have to find common ground and answers. And so what I'm one of my questions was to impart some of the information, since everyone is here, that I heard. And some of the doors I knocked on, people talked to me for quite a long time. And one thing they talked about is those middle teacher salaries, which you did address. And they felt that there needs to sort of be an overall holistic look at the culture and the respect and everything from the parents to the students to the staff, that we were a little top heavy in the admin side, and that there needs to be more focus. And I've brought this up many years before, the money that is allocated to make sure it goes towards retaining those teachers so that our students have high quality education. But I know there are two boards, but the public sees us as an important function because we control the money, and they want to make sure that their voice is heard because they elect all of us. So I just want everybody to understand that's, especially in today's society, that's what the public wants and that they expect out of their elected officials, whether it be a school board member or a board of supervisor member. And they ask us to look at this budget and to make sure that just are accountable to the residents and the school population.
I will say that our school staff, specifically boards that I sit on within the administration, they try incredibly hard to get parental involvement. If you've got ideas, throw them at us, because I see all kinds of events with free stuff and all kinds of things, and you get a handful of parents. But how do you get parents involved?
Well, I would agree with that, because I've already volunteered on 2 CGS field trips. And when my son did CGS, I think I went all 4 years, maybe 1 or 2 field trips. And my daughter's a freshman, and I've already volunteered on 2 of them. And one, if I hadn't volunteered, they wouldn't have been able to go. So I do wish it was parental involvement. So it's all around, but.
That's what I heard. Mr. Sullivan, you had a question?
Actually, no. Ms. Bender brought us back around to the budget, which I appreciate. Let's stick to what we actually have on the agenda.
I got a little bit of question here. A little bit of. How many assistant principals do you have at each school?
So it depends on the school.
Yes.
So let's see if we can go down. So each elementary has 2, right? One in a special ed that oversees special education. So 1 at each elementary in a special ed. The middle school is 2 in a special ed. High school is 3 in a special ed.
The high school, I thought they had 4 like principals.
They have 3. They have a dean of students.
Okay.
Which basically just does this.
She changed positions. There was 4 at one time, I thought.
No, she wasn't an assistant principal, but she served as one. She helped out with administrative things, but she didn't have the title of assistant principal. So 3, 2, and then 1 at each elementary school. And those numbers come through SOQs. Those are based on state recommendations.
Right, recommendations. Mm-hmm. What do 3 assistant principals do during the course of the day? I'd love to find out what they do. No problem. And that's not counting the principal. Because, the way I look at it a little bit, you have, yourself, and then you have a deputy, you, and then you have just the high school, then you have the principal who's making 100 and whatever. And then you have others. So it seems like you have this really kind of top heavy of payment being made at the very top. And at the same time, we're saying teachers need money. You see what I mean?
We've looked deep into this. I'll tell you that when we did an analysis of this, we did a comparison of our surrounding school divisions, which is fair in some respects, but not in others. I mean, we're not Stafford and Spotsy. We are Caroline. So we did an analysis of our surrounding school divisions. We also did an analysis of school divisions of similar size in terms of students. We did this last year. I can pull this, give this back to you guys. We are one of the least top-heavy school divisions of our size. You brought up an interesting point, though, because you don't know what an average assistant principal does during the day.
Yeah.
They're pretty busy. I'll tell you generally when it comes to what's going on in public education right now, and I think we probably would all agree. And in fact, you even see a shift even lately in moving back to more of the basics in terms of the education part of this. But we have really adopted a lot of responsibilities for the reasons that were just discussed, because that's where society thinks they can control and place it. Right now, an average educator, assistant principal, counselor, teacher is doing so much more than reading, writing, and arithmetic, because we're seeing, for many reasons, I'm not trying to criticize nor can I criticize what's going on in every individual household, but we know that most families have, both parents go into work. The majority of our students right now, I would say, comfortably live in a single parent home. So there's a lot of additional responsibilities, not to mention things like mental health, nutrition, all those other things that come up right now. We're being asked to do those things. I can see a shift back in the other direction, but as it stands today and according to state recommendations for SOQs, there's a lot on the plate of an assistant principal and teacher and guidance counselor right now. You almost make me want to let you shadow one day and see what that looks like, because they're putting that time in. You said you want to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be wonderful. Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
I'd like for no one to know that I'm going to come in that particular day and shadow, though. I hate for someone to save all their work up for one day.
We'll give you our 5-bullet email here shortly.
And another, so I do want to be clear on something that I want to back, the salary program for the 5 and 10. What I need out of you, and I think that you haven't been doing the job that long, but I think you're growing through your own person a little bit is what I'm seeing. And so this is what I got to trust you with, is that I'd like to make sure that by the time a teacher gets to that 5-year mark, is that a teacher that we want to keep?
Fair.
In any business you're in, just because you're here doing time doesn't mean that you've learned through it, you've grown through it. I know people that have been married for 20 years, and I don't take advice from them because I hear the way they talk about their spouse, okay? But they didn't learn anything in the process. Just because you did time don't mean you got anything from it. And I want to kind of lose, I think sometimes we have the mentality of, I'm not doing time, but I want to get, I don't want to be scared to lose people. And what I've heard a lot since I've been on this board from last year was, well, what if that teacher leaves, and so what? And I don't mean that to the good ones that want to be there. And I'm not talking about the people that have been there, and this will get misquoted, and that's all fine, whatever. Facebook, have fun. But anyway, so there are some good teachers over there. You know what I'm talking about. You're there every day, who've been there for 5 and 10 years, and the fact that the pay scale is that way, and they're dedicated to King George. They live in King George. They want to be in King George, and they don't even gripe about it. I know some of the teachers, they don't even complain about it. Yes, I want to keep them. But there's some that come in, whatever mentality, and they're here for like the first couple of years, and they're already, it's more problematic. And I just want to make sure that we have good people, and that we don't have the mentality of, well, what happens if they leave, we find somebody else. That's what happens. Okay.
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, and I don't have to spell anything out for you, but I just want you to look good and hard at something that I'm promising you that I'm personally going to back you on that. And that's what I'm kind of assuming and expecting on the other end, is that you're going to be able to make those hard decisions that of going, they're going to pay these people, they're going to get them up. And so I want to get people that want to stay here, that want to be here, that want to be in King George. They're not looking for the next, this is my home type people anyway. Anybody else got anything to say, Mr. Collins?
Dr. Boyd, on the whole book thing, and the teachers that came out was very discouraging. It doesn't sound like reading, writing, and arithmetic. It sounds like some liberal left views. So I think, yes, right, I said it.
We're done with the book, so go ahead.
I know.
We created a great process that.
But when I was sitting there in that audience listening to these teachers, say some of these things, it was not only eye-opening, but very disappointing.
I agree.
There's been some things recently that, you know, I've seen on social media, like, and I'm pretty sure you guys have a standard on just doesn't reflect very well in our community. And if other teachers see that, or other businesses, you understand that. Talk to Mr. Smolnick about economic development and what people are looking at, down to the signs that you littered in the medians about the restaurants. I mean, these are things that business looking at. What kind of community am I stepping into? And everything that people say and do affects everybody, whether it's right or whether it's wrong. And if you want to be here, we want to make it work. I want to pay you to be here if you want to be here.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'll tell you, I feel proud to say that we all are sitting in a very good community right now, one that has a school division that I think has been a strong selling point for our community for a decent amount of years. We're fully accredited school divisions. Not that there's certainly areas that we can't improve upon, and that's why we're here, right? And that's my job, and that will be our effort. But I'm proud to say that when we take a look around, we're in a pretty good place in terms of King George County School, and we have been for some time. That doesn't mean we should sit on our loins and say we're good. But I don't want to underestimate the fact that our school division, there's not a school division around us right now that touches our borders that are fully accredited. I think what we're talking about is bigger societal issues right now. We've talked about parenting and what's going on at home. We've talked about the extra demands. We've talked about the profession of teaching. And we haven't really talked about them in great depth. But they're all pressures right now that we're feeling from really outside of our community. And I think if we, when I say we, I mean both boards here, county administrator, superintendent, I think if we all have the same mindset and goals, I think King George is going to be moving forward in the right direction for the foreseeable future.
Thank you. I think Mr. Stroud had something to say.
Yes, sir. A couple things. So, you know, I'm not really looking at like nickel and dime stuff myself.
Yes, sir.
I've got a few things I have questions about, but I think going forward, you know, whenever we talk about building projects and stuff like that, that's where I'd like to really target the huge safe, not, you know, here. But I do have some questions regarding these stipends, because, you know, I look at, and I'm just wondering why, like on the counseling services, the stipend went from $5,000, it increased by $25,000, and what those stipends are. The same thing with
you looking at?
I'm in this workbook.
It's the counseling,
Counseling services?
yeah, down at the very bottom.
Yes, the last line of the counseling and the stipend. The same thing though with the social worker services went up from $5,000 to $20,000. So a $20,000 increase in the stipend. So I'm like, you know, why is there a $20,000 increase? Did they submit receipts or something last year, or how do we do that?
So I can speak in general about that right now, but I can dig deeper if you want to. What's happening right now based on needs in our buildings? We're having to find creative ways of outsourcing a lot of these services, counseling services, mental health services, social services, because we can't meet those needs. So what we're trying to do is bring those back in-house. I think we're on the same page here, and figure out if we can't cover those without having to contract out with someone else.
If you have to contract out, where's that? I'm trying to figure out. There's an increase here. Where's it going down, or where's it coming from?
Well, there's an increase because there's an increased demand. But I follow what you're saying in terms of, you know, if the demand were to stay the same year over year, then I think we would probably drop it in one area and pick it up in another. I think what we're seeing though is an increased demand in speaking with our students.
So stipend isn't like an individual stipend for individuals. That's a stipend because that.
You know what line you're looking at?
It's in structural materials. It's 30,000 was 5,000.
The last page in the counseling services.
I don't see line.
Page number.
It's the last line like the social services, the last line, counseling services.
Okay. Okay. So these are coming through our Ms. Fisher through our student services. And so in speaking with her, and I can go get you greater detail if you want as well. Again, same conversation, just increased demand. So this, for example, over the summer, all of our counselors go home, but there'll be situations that'll go through FAFT or basically students that need services over the summertime. So what we've done in the past is that we'll pay out of like an hourly fund to cover these services. We'd rather budget them on the front end than try to pay for them through like breakage or something like that.
So Dr. Boyd, I wasn't even going to get into the stipends, but there's a stipend for everything, you know. And when I was on the school board, I had a fit about all those stipends. They were paying for stipends for people that didn't even do anything. There was newspapers that didn't even exist, but they were paying a stipend for it. So literally, you know, you get a stipend for everything. It's a ridiculous amount of money. I know I'm not very popular with the teachers because it's kind of like a little slush fund. You know, you do this, I'll give you $5,000 more a year for a stipend.
Well, what we tried to do last year, we didn't really touch stipends too much this year. What we tried to do last year was, we've had a lot of conversations. I don't think those stipends had changed for 20-some years. So we tried to consider inflation in last year's adjustment. This was last year's conversation. The other thing that we did was we tried to standardize them because, like you said, what I was seeing when I jumped into this position is, particularly at our elementary schools, there were, you know, maybe a stipend at Potomac that there wasn't at Sealston, right? So we gave them directive to show me exactly what you expect stipends for. We determined that, you know, each school could have a certain number of clubs. So we standardized the stipends across the board. And what we attempt to do is monitor what they're doing for that money. And now these are most of these, like probably 70% of these are coaches who are, they're putting in more hours than that money is. I mean, it's maybe a couple dollars. It's not a minimum wage job if you're.
I wasn't talking about coaches. I was talking about the educational piece. There's literally a stipend for department chair, math coach, friend of math coach, brother of math coach.
No, there's no math coach stipend in there. There is department chair. Department chair does take on extra responsibilities, but most of the others are extracurricular.
Some of the clubs don't even meet but once a quarter, but somebody's getting a stipend for.
I mean, I don't know how to convince you otherwise, but I can tell you right now that we're keeping pretty close tabs after we standardize them. And my impression right now is that they're working for those stipends. We'll continue to monitor and take a look at them, but we're not. I hope that this budget has conveyed, and we have tried to convey in this presentation that we want to be good stewards of county money, and we're not giving away money. There's no need to do that. You know, just as I mentioned before, we'll certainly take away that virtual position if we don't need it. I mean,
I want to bring this back. This is Mr. Stroud's original question, so I'll let him finish up.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So I'm just curious, like, do teachers do a time card? Or how do they?
They're contracted.
So there's no way, like and this is also for like finance, but there's no way to link a stipend to a billable hour or something that's billable in a system. Like you go in and audit a system and see, okay, you know, there's a transaction code. You can search a transaction code. Right. You can see where all the stipend money went and
so probably in the school division, you know, there is a set of responsibilities associated with that stipend. You know, usually it involves around supervision of students. So making sure that students are participating in this program. You know, DECA is a good one. Ms. Strauss, she has a ton of students that go into the DECA program, and you all know what she does in terms of that stipend. And then there's responsibilities. So for example, it'll be, you know, a season of coaching. It'll be a year of being department chair. And then there's certain common responsibilities associated with those positions.
Because if there was a year of coaching, I'm just using that as an example.
Right.
And you had last year did it with 5,000, but now you have 20,000. That's a lot more coaching. I mean, using it as an example. I mean, that's a, you know,
That's for all the sports, though. The increase is for all of the sports, all the.
Well, but I think the analogy is a tough one to follow because with coaching, it's not going to go from 7 to 20. But for something like a social worker stipend or something like that, it could, the demand based on our student population could change.
so you have a demand signal that indicated that you need to go from 5 to 25,000.
Correct, and I can get you deeper into that if you want to.
Okay. I think that helps me understand. So it means that last year you went to 20,000 in the hole.
Pulling it from things like breakage and things like that. Yeah, we don't go in the hole. We won't go in the hole.
You just say, no.
But I'm following you. Yeah, to your point, it is in the hole.
And then real quick, on the human resources, 1, 2, 3, the purchase services has a $46,000 increase for purchase services on human resources.
So that's 35,000. You can see where that breaks. Are you on the page where you see where it breaks down? Or are you on the summary page? That might be the summary page. So where that breaks down into is, again, a good portion of that is the digitalization of our records.
Okay.
And then also onboarding, our onboarding program, which we covered in the budget presentation. That's our employee onboarding program.
Okay. And then the something I think would be helpful for me anyway, it's going through this is and this is, you guys put some really nice packages together. So I appreciate that. I know there's a lot of time and effort went into it, but being able to see, you've got on this summary, it's got the proposed 25, 26, approved 24, 25. If I had that 5 years,
okay, so
that with what the amount is and a percentage. And then, so you can see over 5 years, we've been constantly going up 10% a year or 5%, because this right here, if I use this and say, okay, and I did some math, then I say, okay, for the next 5 years, we're going to go up this much money. Then from a supervisor's position, we got to come up with a lot more money. Okay. And that could be a problem. So I want to know, what is our average over the last 5 years? And it needs to cover periods like, COVID, and, historical things, so that we can kind of look at it and figure out what that is. And then we can compare that with growth rate. We can compare it with, other factors that are impacting that.
That makes good sense.
And it helps me anyway, probably make a better decision on things, on that.
Thank you.
That's all I've got, sir.
Ms. Hoover, do you have anything in your team?
No, thank you. Does anyone on the board have anything?
I just want to thank Dr. Boyd and his team I just think this meeting went well, and I think the presentation went well, and I think you did a phenomenal job, so thank you.
Thank
you. Heather?
For someone who's been on a while, I've always complimented you on the book that we get a lot better than when I was first on the board, because it didn't look like this and it was not all broken down. And I want to jump off of what Mr. Davis said, is to make sure we take care of those teachers that have been here a while and that really are invested in King George, and they're not here for the salary, they're here to make a difference. So we need to make sure we take care of them and keep them here.
Thank you.
I know we got some good ones over there. I don't overlook that at all. And that's why I want to make sure that we're rewarding the ones that want to do that. Mr. Small, if you had something, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to update the Board of Supervisors where we're at on the budget. So COM board numbers were published Friday afternoon. Levita, Laverne, and myself, we sat down all day today going over revenues. So those revenues, they're not keyed in yet, but we've got them. I will be presenting the Board of Supervisors a balanced budget on my initial presentation on Tuesday, the 18th of March. So one last piece of the puzzle that we need direction from the Board of Supervisors is the additional request from the school. What number would you like us to put into the budget? Right now I'm looking at $2,812,034. And whatever that number is, I think the schools will work and they know their priorities, kind of what that looks like from the school side. And then I will insert that number into my initial budget presentation. And if we need to have additional budget retreats after that, I think Dr. Boyd and I will be more than happy to schedule that with you. But that's what I'm looking for to complete the budget for the 18th presentation.
Mr. Stone,
Can you remind us how much was it that you guys gave back this year? This year, about 1.5 million.
1.3, wasn't it?
and is it 2% that you're required to?
We're supposed to keep that mark.
Right about there, that's required to come back. Which is one reason why you're overshooting, but the thing is that you come back and get that. Mr. Collins?
So I don't think it's tonight fair to give you the number that the school board should rest on. I think it needs to be mulled over a bit, discussed in the 18th meeting, and then fill in the number then, because you'll have other considerations.
Ms. Bender?
My question is, based on the budget you've already worked up, would this, to fund fully the schools, would that also be a tax increase? And what kind of tax increase would that be?
We're not there yet, Ms. Bender. No, my goal is to keep the tax rate the same. That is my ultimate goal, to present a budget. And then I can gladly make a presentation on the 18th. It just won't be a balanced budget if I don't know what to put in for the school. So I can present it as a flat budget from last year. And they'll still, I need to put that number in to present a balanced budget. If you want me to just bring something to you that is not 100%, I'll be more than happy to do that. My goal was to bring you a balanced budget, but I'll look for your direction.
Can you bring us 3 courses of action, one with a full amount, one with half, and one with none, so we at least get a feeling for whether it's going to incur a tax increase or not?
But we haven't discussed any of the other expenditures for the county. So to prematurely give them a number.
I'm not giving them a number. I'm giving access to an educated guess based on 3 different possibilities from this number. Something that we can at least work with when we do have this meeting on it.
He's saying what they look like with full, half of what they're asking, and none. Is that possible?
I think we can do that 2.8, 1.4, and 0.
Mr. Stroud, do you have anything there?
I think I would adjust a little differently, but I can live with that. I would instead of, looking at it myself, instead of looking at it in full, half, and 0, I think I would change the percentages down because, I think 0 is a little, it's hard to swallow. I'd probably focus on more of a 10, 30, 50% approach. I don't know if we'd ever get to 0. But
I don't think we will either, but that's something that mentally we can extrapolate, give you an idea. With 10, 30, and 50, there's no linearity there, so it's going to be difficult to extrapolate from that what really is going to happen.
So it's been my experience that whoever comes and gives the presentation to the board first gets the lion's share. So that's why we need to put everything together to see what's what. I don't think we should make a decision until all the numbers are out there.
We're not making a decision tonight. We're asking for 3 options that can help us make a future decision.
Can we make it a 3/4 option
What's that?
instead of 10, 30, and 50, can we do 75?
75 instead of 100?
No.
Got it.
Well,
You didn't put 100 in
And
there.
what would be
so-
100?
You said all of it?
2.8.
He said
2.8 is 100, that's why I just want to clarify.
He said
2.8 is 100.
20, 30, and 50.
There's a certain threshold too. For example, going back to the raise, the school budget process is so much more, it's calculus compared to some of the other departments. But for us to accept that 3% SOQ raise, there's usually a match requirement that comes out of the budget. So, you know, I think we want to make sure that in order to provide that 3% raise, you know, we're covering that margin as well. You know what I mean?
We're going to give you a pot and you decide what happens.
Well, under the assumption that we're given a 3% rate.
That would be up to you all.
It's tied to that. I mean, that 3% raise is tied to us providing a 3% raise.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, Mr. Collins, we give a complete breakdown of everything because that's what you requested.
Yes, but what I'm saying is if you all decided to fund, you all decided to
I know,
fund
but we're playing.
other categories and not a raise, that would be up to you. We don't have to do that. We just give you.
Unless we came back to at the next board meeting and was like, hey, can we have this money for that? You say, we gave it to you already. And I didn't hear you, Mr. Davis. I didn't hear the 100%. So sorry.
Dr. Boyd, I don't think he understands the match that you're talking about. You know what I mean? The 3% having to give it and we get money from somebody else to help fund it.
So, explain the 3% again?
Yeah.
All right, so right now the General Assembly is recommending a 3% salary increase. They're only going to provide funds up to SOQ positions, which is we've talked about this, far fewer than the number of positions that we have. But oftentimes, and again, this budget, this is an important thing. We're working off the assumption that this budget is passed through the General Assembly. We're very early in the process. Oftentimes, we don't know this number. There's been years where it's been June 30th, where we're still trying to figure out if the General Assembly is going to pass a budget. That's a huge variable right now that is a moving target. But oftentimes when the General Assembly passes a raise of 3%, they have the local officials on the hook for a certain match. I don't know what that percentage is right now, but I think when we're talking about, you know, if that's the route you guys choose to go, if we're talking about a certain percentage of that 2.8 that you can fund, I certainly want to make sure that we meet the threshold of meeting the match that's required. Otherwise, you turn that money back over to the state because you haven't met that threshold.
So in the General Assembly, there's a lot more talk this year of more funds for education. So I would think that it would go up, not down.
They did. So the governor's budget was, you know, we were asking the local for 4.1. They went up a lot. We're seeing more money in special education. We're seeing they took away what they call the support cap, which was money that we lost over the last economic downturn. So there's some things that are coming out of the House and the Senate that are providing a lot more money to public education, which is evident through comparing the two budgets, the governor's and the General Assembly. But where it sits right now is the General Assembly has turned that budget back over to the governor. The governor has 30 days to review it. And I think it's the first week of April where the budget will go back to the General Assembly, and they'll, I believe at that point, they'll pass a budget based on the governor's recommendations. So it's still a very fluid time in you know, passing a budget on the state level, which a huge portion of public education funds contribute, you know, are dependent upon those state funds.
Mr. Chair. Yes, sir. So now that we're on this subject, personally, I don't have an issue with the salary because of that match to the overall. But I do have a couple questions. So do teachers get paid more if they have a higher level of education?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you measure the return on that investment?
How do you measure the return on their education?
Yeah, so if you have a person with a bachelor's degree and a person with a doctorate.
A master's degree, a doctorate.
Yeah, but if they're both teaching students, how do you measure that the county is getting a return on the investment for paying for the master's and doctorates over the person with a bachelor's degree?
Yeah, we're now diving into, so this is, you know, in a factory model where we're pumping out a product that's a pretty standard static product. That type of analysis is very useful and very possible. When we're talking about the product of a child, there's so many contributing factors that go into that. So might a teacher that has a doctorate provide a better education? Maybe yes, maybe no. It's so hard to eliminate just that factor when you're talking about outcomes. And in education, what we measure is through SOLs, through SAT results, NAEP results. There's a number of factors that we use to say we've made this much improvement year over year. But we're also talking about a child who has had experiences at home. They've had social, emotional, all kinds of different experiences that lend into that factor. So over the years, when we look at an education merit-based pay system, it's so difficult to limit it down to one single factor like improved education.
So, yeah, the thing is if a teacher, and this is where these analytics are valuable, and this is something that personally I think that you should have and you should dig into, because if you've got two classes of sixth graders and one of the teachers has a bachelor's degree, one of them has a doctorate, and one of the bachelor's degree average grades are higher than the one with a doctorate degree, then we're paying the wrong person more money.
Oh, well, I follow you on that. The problem with it, though, is that there are other contributing factors to that particular situation. What you just said was 2 sixth grade classrooms, one teacher has a doctorate, one doesn't. Those aren't the only two factors in that experiment. What you have to also look at is the makeup of the student body. There could be 10 special education students in one class and 2 in the other. So outcomes are going to be different.
Yeah, but according to that, we might as well have all bachelor's degrees because they're going to perform just as good as the doctorates based on the students. You could have more teachers with bachelor's degrees and maybe do a better job than having fewer bachelor's and more doctorates.
No, so.
I don't think they get paid much more, Ken.
So, Mr. Stroud,
No, they don't.
the ideal is that the better that you do at your work, which, you know, your work and your employees, the more classes, the better employee they will be as far as outcomes. So generally speaking, if you have a teacher that has a bachelor's, the better that teacher gets with more education and classes will help that student that they get.
But you need a way to measure that. And what Dr. Boyd just said is they don't really have a good way of measuring it.
You can't measure individuals. You do have, you all still have the evaluations for teachers, and we give that up too.
We do a very thorough job of evaluating all of our staff.
So, yeah. So that's where that kind of, but when I was with the school board, I always encouraged teachers to continue their education, and there has to be some payoff for that. Just like in the world, so you start out as a trooper, you know, the more education, the more specialties you get, you should get more money. But my outcome will still be the same. I'll rest your children.
That doesn't translate.
Our masters, teachers with masters are long-term teachers. They're the ones that are there. They get their masters during teaching usually. Yeah. They don't start off with masters. They just go through and gain their masters, and they only make 2% more than a bachelor's degree. But
7%.
Oh, 7%.
For masters. $2,000, or no, we changed that last year. It's a percentage rate for the doctorate too, but it's not much.
And they don't start off that way. They start off with a bachelor's.
No, and really, as Mr. Collins is pointing out, continued education in this field is valuable in the sense that as Ms. Davis pointed out, these are the ones that are going to stay with us. These are the ones that are invested in our community.
I'm not saying that more education isn't better. I just don't like a system where you're paying for something you can't evaluate.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a lot of, like, in the government, for example, where people get a higher education and they get paid more, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily do more. Maybe not in your area, but I mean, you know, and that may happen in the commercial sector too. But with that, whenever like I said, the increases, you know, that percentage and stuff, but whenever you start applying that and looking at this chart right here, is this something that you just do across the board, or can you look and say, okay, you know what, we're lower year 5 groups, so maybe we target the increases where we're lower at. I mean, you know what I'm saying? We can target that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
With the year 5.
Yeah.
Target year 5.
Yeah. That's how we're going to address the compression. We won't be able. There's 4 steps right now in our pay scale that have a compressed step in it. To handle all of those at one time, we would be asking for 2 months. What we hope to do is start from the top of that step, number 10, attack that one. It's at 0.75 right now. I don't want to get too much in the weeds. We want to raise it to 2, like the other steps. And then we'll probably come back next year, as long as things stay the same, and say, all right, now we need to attack step 9 and make that 2%. So what that'll do there is it'll raise those middle level salaries to the competitive wage in our surrounding areas. So we're trying to do that meticulously in a way that's fiscally responsible, but one that also considers the problem.
I understand that with the surrounding counties and stuff, and you're looking at teachers and such, but the things I listen for whenever you're talking, like with assistant principals and how many they have versus how many we have, is innovative ways to solve problems, innovative ways for you to figure out how to do the job, you know, that increases performance but decreases cost. So, you know, and those are things that you know, I'm interested in. But
yes, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sullins. I was just going to point out, kind of echo what Dr. Boyd said. The difference in salary between somebody with a bachelor's degree and somebody with a master's degree is so small. My son was looking at, he's a teacher, he was looking at getting his master's degree. It was going to take him 10 years to make it work. The break-even point was 10 years because its salary is so small. And as far as comparing classes to class, or comparing teacher A, who may have a certain level of education, with teacher B, that's difficult unless you make their classes exactly the same. Like in his case, a few years ago, he had all the special needs kids in his class. The other math teacher had all of the advanced kids in her classes, but yet they were compared together on the SOLs at the end. That doesn't really compare at all. But you can't necessarily mix it evenly, because if you have all the advanced kids together, perhaps they're feeding off each other and growing. And if you have special needs kids that have a lot of the same needs, then it helps you cut down on the number of staff members in that classroom, because you can cover down on more kids with that. So you can't really compare apples and oranges on this. Thank you.
But also, so philosophical speaking, the Board of Supervisors not in the business to educate children. So that's their job. So if they think that they should be paying more for a master's, that's their choice. But, you know, again, I'll say again, we give you a pile of money and you figure out how to spend it. If it's masters and other things, so be it. And your product will show, you know, if you go on the Department of Education website, you'll see where your King George ranks and all the qualifiers or all the indicators for a successful student. So our job is not to make successful students.
Well, sort of, because you have the money to give us the power to make successful students.
Well, I can give you all money in the world, and you can still not have
You're part of the
successful
team that helps.
I'm just saying, money is not always the answer to success, but it's not our job to determine how you become successful. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. Socrates happening.
Do you have the answer to the question you needed, Mr. Smolnick, or no?
Thank you.
Are you clear on the direction?
So essentially, revenues are going to stay the same. So you want me to prepare with my team 3 separate budgets, which is essentially what we'll have to do with a revenue of 2.8, 1.4, and 0, and then we will have to go through and make the appropriate cut to all 3 budgets by next Tuesday. That's if you wanted me to present you,
I think
it's 3 separate budgets we'll have to create.
That wasn't where I was going. I'm sorry. I don't want to create that much work, and you took that very well. Thank you for not throwing something at me. What I wanted was everything else being equal, not just the revenue, but everything else being equal, whatever that is. Look at this. Just change this number and see. Does that mean we're going to have to increase taxes or not? And if it does, by how much in order to balance that?
Oh, okay.
So hopefully that's one budget looked at with 3 different numbers played with in the spreadsheet.
As Mr. Collins said, we're just going to give them a pile of money. You know, what they do with this,
Well,
I'm going to cut you
but we
off.
were the first to come before the board. We
Yeah.
also said that.
Thank you for the clarification. We got it.
Yeah. Is that good? Is that better? Are we clear? Are you good with that? Ms. Hoover? Are you
Yes,
good
sir.
with that?
Yes, sir.
We
Thank you.
have to take into account everything.
Right.
Fire EMS, it's everyone's thing is the most important thing to them, and I understand everyone's passion behind the school. I know that's why Mr. Frank is where he is, and several of you, I know that's why you're where you are. And our passion is for the county at whole, and you're one of the biggest parts of it. But we have to get a chance. We haven't had a chance to look at everything as a whole yet. And so we can't get, but we are ahead of where we were last year. And last year we were ahead of where we have been in several years going back before that. So I'm happy with progress, and as we keep going, we'll get better.
Thank you for agreeing to the joint meeting. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there any other comments from anyone before we? Mr. Bush?
One comment is the same thing when we talk about students in the classroom, master's degree compared to bachelor's degree. There are so many variables involved, and a few of them were mentioned by Mr. Sullins. And it's the same way, I think, if we want to have students that are highly successful, there's so many variables involved. It's not simply the teacher in the classroom. It's the materials they have available. It's the support that they have. It's all these factors come into play. It is not just their salary. There's so many pieces to all this. And I guess what I'm saying is, to me, one of the best ways to evaluate all of this is to look where we are in the state right now. We're 118 out of 132 schools. That
106.
is it 106? I'm sorry, 106. I mean, we're very successful with the money that we've been given. And I guess what I think is important is that we do really give you the needs-based budget, and that is what we need to operate properly. And if we have to have less, then something has to be sacrificed. But who ends up making the sacrifice? The students. So I just, go ahead.
I know, we want to be done, but that justification, if you compare the public schools to the private school and the grades and their education and compare that cost to the public school, then, and I don't know, I'm just going off what I've, have heard, there's a big difference.
Okay, I was an administrator in a private school for most of my career. Public school in terms of, I was an administrator 12 years in private schools. And you are right. We had, there was one private school in Kenya when every single one of our graduates, 100% had scholarships at Division I's. I've never seen it, average 1450 on the SATs. Why? Every one of them had tutors. They were very wealthy kids. The parents there's so many variables involved, especially with private schools. Mr. Stroud, there is no comparison between the students that are in private schools. Also in private schools, most of them have testing before they even allow you in the school. The students have to be at a certain level to even get there. Those kids are going to achieve. And then they have the parental support is gigantic in private schools. Every time that I had a meeting and there was anything to do with education, I would have 50% of the parents of the whole school would show up. So I'm just saying is that what you're saying about the private school doesn't really fit with the needs of the public school. There's too many different variables.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn the Board of Supervisors until, all right, thank you. Well, we have on the agenda secondary public comment. Mr. Collins just pointed that out to me before we can adjourn.
I could do that. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to speak? All right, I'll close public comment.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn the meeting until 5:30 p.m. on the 18th of March in the Rebercombe building.
5:30.
I said that.
I make a motion.
Motion probably second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 I make a motion to adjourn the meeting until March 17th.
Second.
Motion we properly seconded. Chair votes aye. Our meeting is adjourned.
Oh, well, we didn't